ready. But
What's going on, everybody? We are here today, as you can tell by the title. We got a debate. It's been a while since I've debated officially, quite some time. We're doing
yes,
Itachi
sir.
versus Minato, theoretical prime Itachi versus prime alive Minato. So specific, we're gonna be specific. Those are the specific versions we're doing because
Yeah.
versions, the specific versions can greatly alter how this would turn out. So those are the specific versions. I'm doing Minato. Batman's doing Itachi. We're gonna wait a couple
Yes,
of minutes
sir.
to see if more people come in. What's going on, Sir Goats? It's good to hear from you again, brother. What's going on, Wicked? Tanner, Kedrick, what's going on, brother? Star, I don't know what's going on, man. Um, so yeah, you can tune in through the stream, tune in through here. We'll let you guys decide. There's no judge here. We don't have like anyone
Yeah.
else on the stage. You guys could just decide who you thought won. Shinobi, he would have been a good judge like in time, but he's busy currently.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna wait a couple
Shinobi could
minutes.
always give his verdict too at any time.
Yeah,
But yeah, as for like official judgment, we just decided to let it be to the people.
yeah, that's the
We're
fairest
treating this as
way.
a fun sport, anyways. Nothing crazy or serious. So,
Yeah, it's been a while
but
since I've debated officially, so uh,
if it was against like some of my other boys, or some other people in the YouTube game, whatnot, then yeah, then we'd probably take it, more serious. But what's it
yeah,
called? Because feats are feats.
yeah, it's been a while since I've been able
But
to like debate officially in a while. So I think Shinobi was the last one, last
yeah,
person
yeah,
to
no, it was
officially.
you and Shinobi, and you guys did Pain and Itachi, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Pain and Itachi, and I was debating for Itachi there,
No,
but
exactly.
he is my
That's what I'm
favorite character,
saying.
folks. But yeah,
Yeah.
let's see,
Oh
pull
wait.
my notes out. But yeah, folks, yeah, it should be a good one. Let me pull my notes out.
Just
Should
getting
be
a couple statements left, and then what's it called? And just go feats, and I'm good to go. Shouldn't take that long.
just so. Yeah, I think I got everything. Let me double check too. See. But yeah, folks, with this, hopefully for Minato specifically, I came up with some arguments I don't think anyone's ever used, at least, you know, uh, amongst a large audience. So we'll see if some of these arguments I have surprise you folks, made some new ones. So
Yeah,
uh,
man.
it's been a while, but I am better than when I debated this publicly a long time ago, Minato versus Itachi. I'm quite a bit better than I was then. So
Oh yeah. Do 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 do.
we'll tell your true
Uh,
opinions after, by the way, on this shit.
oh yeah.
What we
Oh yeah.
actually believe on. Yeah, so just keep that in mind while we're
Yeah.
debating this.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're both goated characters, but there
yeah,
there
oh,
is a
facts,
true
facts.
winner.
Yeah, there's a true winner. Yeah,
Yeah. Have you made
yeah.
that video, Jay? I
I
don't
need
think
to.
you
I
have.
don't think I
Itachi
have.
versus
No.
Minato. That'd be a good video of you doing that too.
Yeah, I need to do that.
Shit,
Uh,
because there's been a couple content creators that have done it, but not everybody. Like it's really not that many content creators that have that video either,
I've
and it's
only
such
seen
a
like
good contentious topic.
six. Yeah,
Yeah,
six done it, and I don't know if TZ has or
NC
not. Yeah,
NC's
NC.
did it.
Yeah, he's done it.
I swag. Those three I know for a fact, but
Swag.
I'm gonna be
Yeah.
honest. As for anybody else, I don't think nobody else has done it though.
No, they haven't. That's a good it's a
Yeah.
good matchup. Good enough to debate at least.
Yeah.
Uh, all right. I think I got everything ready on my side. I think. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. Let me pull up
Very
my.
nice.
I think I got my scans right here. Okay. Got that. I gotta pull this up. Yeah. Pull that up. Wait. All right. All right, folks. We're nearly ready. Once we're both ready, we'll begin.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry for the delay, too, guys.
Oh yeah,
What's
good,
it
good.
called? My dumbass thought it was tomorrow because I mixed up with the messages we had before, where
Yeah.
the potential Saturday event to stream, and then I know we normally do stuff on Thursday, so I thought it was Thursday instead of Wednesday. But
Oh, for real. Yeah. We'll stream tomorrow for sure. Maybe Shinobi could give his take if he can make it. But yeah, folks, for you guys that came in on the stream, specific version, so you guys know specifically again, it's Prime Itachi alive versus Prime alive Minato. Those are specific versions we're debating. I'm advocating for Minato. Batman's advocating for Itachi. So those are the specific versions. Um, the conclusions could greatly change depending on the versions you're debating. There's KCM, Minato, Edo Itachi, Sick Itachi, all
Yeah.
that obviously would change things. But yeah, those are the specific versions, and seemingly the most interesting matchup between those two. So, which is why we kind of
Oh yeah.
decided to do that. So,
Big facts. Is
yeah,
there
those guys are fucking good. So we had
who
to.
do you guys are waiting just a little bit longer? Who do you guys have? You guys got Minato or Tachi?
Yeah, folks, who do you guys have winning? Who do you guys have winning that? Prime Alive Itachi or Prime Alive Minato?
And you don't gotta explain your reasonings, just say who you got.
Yeah, don't do that shit because yeah, debating. Itachi's a true winner. All right. Itachi
No?
also beats Casey and Minato. Oh shit. All right.
I don't know about that one. It's
That's crazy.
I'll be real with you. Like if Jay had Casey a minute so, I would not debate that.
Nah, fuck that. I probably wouldn't even debate that if I was Itachi's
I'd be
side.
like, all right, give me a EMS Itachi
Yeah,
then, or
facts.
some shit, or I don't
That
know, or a
wouldn't be fair.
hypothetical winning.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be fair at all.
Shit.
You'd have to pull like Kashirama
Uh,
against them or something. Prime Alive
fuck
Itachi,
that.
okay. Minato, okay. Some guys think Minato, Itachi. All right.
Nice.
It's pretty split. I've seen from most of the community on who they think wins, but
Yeah.
it makes sense. So I mean, it's pretty interesting. So let's
Big facts. Big facts.
see. But yeah, hopefully, folks, after this, maybe we were talking about it before. Maybe Batman and Shinobi could debate. That'd be a good one too in the future.
Is there? I'm gonna pull my stream. Get that ready too.
Good debate actually. Shout out to Sage. It would actually be Sage versus Shinobi. I feel like that'd be a good debate.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good debate.
Yeah, I feel
Okay,
like
the
they're
only
similar
thing though is Shinobi would definitely need a prep though, because
a
Sage
lot.
he has
Yeah,
it
yeah,
all. Yeah, he has it like all ready to go, bro.
yeah. I feel like
Like
they're
that would be.
pretty
It would kind of be like a
similar.
disadvantage for Shinobi, because Sage
Yeah.
technically has all the prep done. While Shinobi would need to like look through, and remind you, like he has it for like the entirety of the series too, like for
Oh
all
yeah,
fucking
he's very
chapters. Like that's his
knowledgeable.
shit. He works for
Yeah.
it, you know. Yeah.
What's going on, Happy
So
Bara? Hasn't begun yet. We're just Batman's still doing some final preps.
yeah. I will say this though. I do think like they're both really really good, but
They are.
I do think Shinobi like has the edge and all around for debating wise.
His
So I
rhetoric
feel
is
like it
really
would
good.
still
Yeah.
balance, yeah, like rhetoric and all that. It would still balance out in a way, but at the same time, that'd be interesting, you know.
Yeah, that's a
Because
good one.
knowledge wise would be in Shinobi's, not Shinobi, Sage's advantage
Yeah,
though.
Sage is very
So
seasoned right now, especially he's a content creator. So,
yeah,
but yeah, I feel like they have very similar debate styles in a way when I hear them debate. Um, Shout out to Sage though, he's the boy.
the facts.
But yeah, folks, we're nearly ready. Just waiting. I'm done on my side. Batman's just getting his final preparations.
Is there?
See.
Honestly, what I'll do just to speed this up because I could probably just like get it during the debate, if
Oh yeah,
needed or
for sure.
whatever. Because I know you know a lot too, so like most of the stuff I got was like just in case. But obviously, if you already agree that's a thing, then there's no point, you know. But
Yeah, that's only I feel like we don't
um,
memorize something happening or some shit.
exactly, and that's what this is mainly on. So if I need to get it, then so be it. For now though, what's it called? I'll just leave that there, and I'll at least just have the chapter ready, pulled up, just in case if I need to pull it through.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and obviously, if you're needing a chapter, because I know the chapters pretty well, Jay. So
Yeah.
even if for you or whatever, I don't care. I'll let you know where it's all at, so you can see and go through it too.
Yeah, I think
Um,
yeah, I
that's
think
if
I
you
have
need
every scan
something
I
too, or
need.
for me. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. I think we're ready then.
Uh,
If you're ready, if we're good to go.
yeah. I'll leave it here. Basically, I got a good amount of stuff. I could just, yeah, I can go from here. So
All right, folks. We're gonna begin again one more time because a few more people came in. It's Prime alive Itachi versus Prime alive Minato. I'm Minato, and I'm advocating for him rather. And Batman is, advocating obviously for Itachi in his prime, alive. Let's make it very specific so you guys know the context and know specifically what we are debating. But yeah, you guys let us know after how it goes. We'll probably stream tomorrow. Shinobu will probably give his verdict as well. I'm sure he'll have watched it by then. Hope you guys enjoy. Hit the like button, and let's begin. Did you want to go first,
Alright.
or do you want me to start off with the argument?
Honestly, brother, like that's up to you. I
Yeah,
could, but I feel like you probably were a lot more ahead on the prep side of things, so it might be more like short and concise if you go first. But
yeah.
um, it's up to you, man. Don't matter though.
All right. Yeah, I guess I could start out. So I guess I'll begin by establishing the speed scaling premise when comparing the two.
Yeah,
So starting off, I'll be referencing Itachi, but I know obviously we're not debating him, but I'll explain why I am.
yeah.
Itachi was unable to react to a lightning strike very efficiently. I think most could agree. If we don't, I can pull it up when he's fighting Sasuke. With a lightning strike speed being approximately 270,000 miles per hour.
Mm,
Um, so although holding back in this battle, because that's another argument that can be brought up, he was holding back.
yeah.
In his battle with Sasuke, he displays a very apparent and visible shocked facial expression when the Kirin is being summoned and struck upon him, indicating he was even impressed and had to react accordingly, not to die on the spot via Kirin. He can't really play that off because I think we can all agree if that were to strike him head on, that's obviously would have killed him. So light speed
Yeah,
itself,
yeah.
now speaking of light speed, itself is approximately 670 million miles per hour, right? So in comparison to a lightning strike rather, it's about 2,400 times faster than a lightning strike. So now getting to Prime Itachi, kind of connecting all the dots here. Although Casey and Naruto was striking against Edo Itachi, who I think we can agree, unless you disagree, Edo Itachi is
Yeah.
essentially the bare minimum relative to what Prime Itachi would have been, right? He has no illness. He doesn't have
Mm,
that depleting him, and he's, according to Toriyama and Madara when describing the Edo Tensei, virtually at full power, right? So unless you disagree, Edo Itachi is basically Prime Itachi, or relative at the very least. Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so although Casey and Naruto is striking against Edo Itachi somewhat relatively alongside B, we must note that he was fatigued, and I could pull this up if you don't recall this,
Yeah.
because he actually had to disperse doppelgangers and KCM, shadow clones, I should be more specific, shadow clones amongst the entire battlefield, all battlefield locations. He dispersed KCM level shadow clones to the battlefield
Mm,
prior to even engaging with Edo Itachi and Nagato, implying high Chakra usage clearly, especially when using KCM. Additionally, it wasn't KCM 2 yet, so he didn't have like perfect synergy with Kurama as at this moment, right? So it
yeah.
was a harder time for him to utilize KCM. So when engaging with Edo Itachi, not only was he in casual conversation with him, implying a lack of effort to some degree, he was also fatigued due again to the dispersion of multiple shadow clones amongst the entire battlefield of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. While conversely, as we know how Edo's function, when Kabuto removes their personality, which he did in this instance, they are
Yeah.
essentially bloodlusted. They are only acting out the user's will, i.e., Kabuto's will, which is what Itachi was specifically doing in this instance when trying to defeat Naruto in combat. So what we have here is a fatigued, uh, arbitrary lack of effort Naruto fighting a bloodlusted Edo Itachi, who again is essentially in his prime. So comparing this to Minato's feats, specifically when he casually reacts. I can pull that up too if you don't agree with that premise. Casually reacts
Yeah.
to the Raikage at full speed, which is stated multiple times to be, or at least specifically in a data book to be light speed. This clearly displays a significant discrepancy in speed between Prime Alive Minato and hypothetical Prime Alive Itachi, essentially indicating a vast gap in speed between what would be a theoretical Prime Itachi and, of course, Prime Alive Minato. Hence, basically indicating that Minato is far faster than even Prime Itachi, with the multiple layers of substantiation I just introduced.
Yeah.
Um, so to kind of add on top of that, now to kind of prepare for some counters, one could say, right, because this comparison between Minato and Casey Naruto is made because the Raikage, compares the two, and people would argue, oh, maybe the Raikage is slower. because he's older. He's not battling as much. You know, he's just kind of all this time he was kind of just looking over the bureaucracy and more of the intangibles of the village as opposed to combat. He does say specifically when talking about, or even if you argue that he's faster now because he's older, more wise, more experienced, maybe closer to his prime, he does say specifically, Minato, you know, I'm the fastest since Minato. He's talking in present tense, right? So currently, he does still deem Minato to be the fastest since, you know, he was the fastest prior to his death. So kind of remove that counter. So all in all, I'll just not go any further with the other aspects just yet, so I don't, you know, unintentionally shock it or anything. Essentially, Minato is substantially faster than Itachi due to the substantiation I just provided. So that's all I'll start out if you want to counter or anything. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's very good points and whatnot. And so basically, at least to engage with some of the points, because they all connect to each other. The first one with the Naruto, I'm not going to sit here and be dishonest. The Naruto thing is absolutely correct. So the KCM Naruto, he's not at full power.
Yeah.
What's it called? Unless like it happened like off fucking screen, you know what I mean? Like then what's it called? Then you could be with it, but since we don't know, we don't know. You know, it could maybe,
Right.
you know, like that's a whole other can of worms. So we had to go what we objectively see, and what we do see throughout the war. So here's actually a fun fact. So KCM Naruto is never technically at full power the entire time. What's it called? Because even when he has the cloak on and he's moving, he's utilizing the speed, so he's already draining the power. And then two, just from it glowing and shit, like there's statements to where he's using the power. Even Killer Bee says several times, "Hey, are you sure you want to like use that form? Maybe you should save it." You know, and so on and so forth. So he's doing that the moment he's trying to get to the war and battlefield, and his first encounter he has is with the A in Sonate,
Yeah.
and all that. So that's kind of like the closest you get to seeing him using like at least two full. He's not at full, but the closest you're gonna really get. And then like Jay said, he does tons and tons of feats in the war. So that I do agree with. By the time he gets to Itachi and Nagato, we don't have any idea where his power level really is, quantification wise. So
Right.
I do agree with that one. The only thing that is interesting though, what's it called? Where this is where it gets a little contentious is when we see his interaction with the Raikage. When the Raikage goes V2, that's when you eventually see like him utilize his full speed for one moment, right? And then he's clearly like faster, has like the whole Minato comparison, whatever, etc. So like that was remind you like not even a full KCM, but it doesn't matter because we know that they're comparing Minato, right? So with the Minato thing of comparing that Minato, because that was Yellow Flash too. But then you have obviously fast forward to Okage Minato who would be slightly stronger or whatever. But so when you have those versions, the way I see it basically is for Itachi's speed in order to like be adequate in this scenario is for basically like when you have Itachi that this is shown narratively, right? At least that's what I'm arguing from, and I'll get those if I need to. But when it comes to like the narrative implication and statements, that there's the correlation from Itachi to Obito, and then obviously we know the correlation of Obito to Minato. So there's narrative statements and implications to where Itachi's basically being put on a certain emphasis to be above Obito or at least a threat to Obito, right?
Yeah.
And so, and if we correspond that directly to Minato, because we know Minato obviously fought Yellow Mask Obito, what's it called, during the Nine Tails incident, that's when you can have a conversation of whether or not they could actually scale to each other when it comes to speed, relativity, relativity, equal whatever. So that's where basically, at least for Itachi, that's kind of like the direction that technically I would go in a certain scenario. And then obviously, like you said, the with the Edo feats, that's at least just showing him, you know, have scaling to whatever, you know, nerfed version of that KCM Naruto. We just know that KCM Naruto, at least during the Raikage point, was on some similar level of speed to Minato because he's not faster than flying Raijin 2. That's another thing too. Like when Minato when he outsped the Raikage, it was with flying Raijin, but he does come back to do like the finishing blow on his back and like he's moving and shit and whatnot. So even like his normal body speed was pretty superior to the Raikage. But basically, what I'm getting at though is when it comes to like their body speed and everything, um, that is clearly shown to be above the Raikage, and that was, mind you, the Yellow Flash Minato. But if we look at the Nine Tails incident, where we have them both going at it, moving at full speed, and then we correspond that to Itachi, that's where I would say that the speed is either going to be similar, whether if there's either relativity or if you have, or them even potentially being equal.
Yeah.
Unless Minato is doing the flying Raijin, that's where I would, be like, okay, like Tachi can't really do that much against that, right? Because flying Raijin's just a realm of speed nobody can really acquire or get to unless you're talking about way later on.
Right.
So that's like my first response. And I can get and to try to substantiate the narrative claim. So it's ABCs. The 3 points I'll say. The first point was the conversation with Itachi and Obito, where he basically has a negotiation with
Yeah.
him. And it's like, hey, basically, we know the context. Help me with the Uchiha clan. If you don't, then we're gonna basically fight, right? And there's like different versions of it. The novels where Itachi's like, oh, I will just kill you, right? And then you have the manga, which is the first thing. So technically, is that, but they basically it's just insinuating that they're gonna fight, right? If they don't agree. And then
Yeah.
Obito's like, okay, whatever, and then they go their way. So that's the first thing that kind of like, in a sense, initiates that they can clearly be comparable to one another, or at least him to be perceived as a threat. So that's the first window we have, but it's still like vague, right? We don't completely know because we don't have any exchanges or nothing. There's nothing blatantly stating whether if it's just Itachi's MS and Susano that makes him a threat, or if it's his body. You know what I mean? So that's the first thing we have. The second thing is then when we have where there's a time skip and there's all these fucking years. And it turns out that Obito, well, the moment Itachi's death occurs from Sasuke, he then comes out with a statement talking with Zetsu saying, finally, that eyesore is gone, whatever. Nothing stands in my way. We can now be able to fully make our plans come into fruition, basically to be in place. And that's when he says pain to Konoha, because now Konoha was no longer off limits, and either with Sasuke and etc. And the whole nine, right? So that was the second narrative thing that you have comparing Itachi, and then the third thing. This is technically movie only. What's it called? I can. This is for Naruto, Road to a Ninja. If you know that one, Jay.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that then there's a thing whether if you can say if it's canon or not, but if we have to get into that, it's fine. But I'm just bringing it up as an example. This is the point C where we have actually Itachi and Obito to Orange Mask, and basically, without even moving or anything, Itachi was able to analyze how he is, or just realizing like physical attacks won't work against him and just fate, whatever, blah blah. He's able to analyze that on the spot, and then he's like, "But I have other things up my sleeve." Because he says physical attacks won't work, but I have other things to do, and maybe implying that he's going to either utilize something, either with his shotting gun, or maybe it'd be fucking genjutsu, or just some strategy, right? To deal with. We don't fucking know, but either way, he like analyzed them and there's that event, and then Obito's like, okay, yeah, nah, like you're a fucking nuisance even here. You know what I mean? And mind
Right.
you,
Yeah.
this is like an Itachi in like a different. It was either a different universe or dimension. I don't know all that, but it's not our Itachi, right? And he was still like, yeah, nah, I'm good, and like this is the official Obito too. So there's that one. The fourth narrative thing. The only thing, yeah, that was that I forgot to mention out was when he's talking with Sasuke. He even says flat out, "If Itachi knew everything about me, then I would most certainly be dead." And that was like right after you got hit by the Amaterasu. So we
Right.
have
Yeah.
like a couple, several narrative statements, and basically what I'm trying to substantiate with just the one notion is that can kind of basically at least put Itachi in a certain ballpark. Um, of scaling speed wise, all around to where it's not such a discrepancy to where therefore like he just can't do anything. At least physical stats wise, right? Because this is excluding like abilities or whatever, so on and so forth. Um, so like that would be like my first engagement. But what do you think on that, Jake?
Right. Okay. So I guess
Yeah.
to counter my opponent's counter, which was to contest my speed scaling via narrative implications with Obito considering Itachi a threat. I'll start by saying this. So I would argue, firstly, this claim is only somewhat substantiated via hearsay, as only statements are made to imply relativity between Obito and Itachi from their
Hmm.
introductions to each other up until Itachi's attempt to assassinate Obito via obviously the activation of the MS when it was in Sasuke's eyes and his eye sockets rather. Furthermore, via feats, which I think feats override statements when statements don't have any explicit feats to substantiate certain, these kind of claims. Bloodlusted Edo Itachi, who was basically, again, Prime Itachi power, as we have agreed previously, was being, again, like I said earlier, being competed against by a significantly fatigued Naruto, who, again, prior to their altercation, dispersed shadow clones amongst all battlefields in KCM mode, which is a significant amount of chakra, clearly. Hence, teenage Obito has a more impressive feat against prime alive Minato, who had no reason to hold back, was defending his country essentially, and his wife, his child, who was clearly bloodlusted. So I would just argue the comparisons between the two is a false equivalency, and statements made by Obito don't negate that very possibility, or high probability rather, to be more specific, because again, essentially feats override statements, and hence my interpretation would override my opponent's due to mine having explicit observational evidence or empirical evidence as opposed to hearsay, which is certainly more shaky and less verifiable, right? Because there is no observations to conclude and verify those statements. So continuing on though, when it comes to the specific statement, when Obito says, I'd be dead if it weren't, if he didn't know my secret, I would argue to further verify my interpretation, which is that he's more so talking about Itachi's intelligence and secret holding rather than his physical ability. He was more so talking about in that very moment. In the very moment he was hit by the MS Amaterasu, he's speaking about that specific moment, because he's saying, if basically saying if Itachi knew my secret, he would have prepared for the calmly, and the Amaterasu would have taken my life, right? That's basically what he's saying. So I would argue he's not arguing, he's not stating this in a general sense, like as if he is saying, oh, he would kill me point blank period in any scenario if he knew my secret. More so, he is saying rather he is saying in this specific instance, if Itachi knew my secret, i.e., that I was Obito, that I had the Kamui, that I had Izanagi, well, he might have known that, but Kamui specifically, I'd be dead right now in this instance. As opposed to saying, oh, he would have killed me, he would be superior to me if he knew my secrets in general when he was alive. So to put it all together, once again, comparing Obito to Itachi and to Minato, I believe is a false equivalency, again, because KCM Naruto was fatigued, as I have proven, when fighting Edo Itachi, who is essentially Prime Itachi, while in casual conversation, which also implies a certain lack of effort, as characters who are alive clearly can't have casual conversations if they're bloodlusted and attempting to take your life. While conversely, again, Edo Itachi was bloodlusted due to having his will removed by Kabuto and acting out Kabuto's will as a result of that. And Obito, again, has a better feat than Itachi ever had, even in his prime as a teenager, against a live, bloodlusted Hokage Minato. So the interpretation that my opponent has, which is that, they're all relative due to narrative implications, I think is the less probable and correct interpretation in comparison to my own, as I've established with actual empirical evidence, as opposed to just, hearsay, which again is less verifiable in the world of logic. It's more fuzzy logic. It's less verifiable and more falsifiable as a result, which I have just done, which I have attempted to do here. So that would be my counter to my opponent's counter on the speed scaling. If you want to counter that or go to the next point, it's up to you though. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely, bro. What's it called? So, no, really good, a lot of logic and argumentation. So basically, if it's the skepticism is mainly being enforced with like, oh, if we don't have feats basically to substantiate, then it's kind of like, I don't know about all that. Because we at least have feats, with Minato. Then that's fine. What I will say as regarding for the feats, though, so we do get to see to some extent of what Orange Mask is Obito, what he's capable of. One interaction that we do get to see is when he's engaging with Kabuto, and then Kabuto basically goes to utilize. He has to basically start utilizing Edo Tensei in order to stop Obito, because basically Obito's like, "Oh, you're a traitor," and the rule in the Akatsuki is if you're a traitor, you get killed, right? So he's like, "I'm gonna kill you." So then he goes to basically go to kill him, and this is the Orange Mask Obito. So in theory, a more stronger Obito. We don't know exactly how far, but at least compared to the massive time skip from the Nine Tails incident when he fought and had a death match against Minato, this would at least have to be somewhat of a stronger Obito, right?
Right.
Or at least the physical stats would be at least somewhat adjusted in a positive direction. Because in throughout the history of Naruto, we both know this as well. No ninja fucking character ever gets weaker. They just get stronger and stronger through time, unless you have like some crazy fucking handicap or some shit, right? You know,
Right.
or whatever. So or nerf like Naruto and Sasuke. But anyways, so what I'm getting at is uh, we see basically sorry, my bad. I was doing
No,
something.
you're good.
We see basically that with when he first interacts with Kabuto, like Kabuto does Edo Tensei, he's like, hey, like I'm gonna use like the whole Akatsuki or whatever or whatnot. Like let's just not fight. Whatever. He tries like basically intimidate him, but Obito's still like, no, whatever. And that's probably more than likely because he has calm or whatever, right? And he could still be maybe win the fight. But what happens is because he still goes, then Kabuto's like, all right, let me do the moderate shit. The only relevance I have for all this is like we do see a certain amount of feats in scaling when it comes to like Edo Itachi to Sage Mode Kabuto. Like we have that whole fight, and then there's also EMS Sasuke that's involved. Um, and basically, what I'm getting at is, mind you, this Itachi wasn't able to kill Kabuto. He had to, like, they're still going all out, right? All because you're not killing doesn't mean you're not going all out. But he couldn't, like, do a lethal blow or anything. But he's fighting against his Sage Mode Kabuto alongside with EMS Sasuke. And that eventually corresponds and correlates to EMS Sasuke that gets to the battlefield. And we do see with that KCM Naruto, to where they're like comparable, right? They're like relative, whatever you name it, and things like that. So basically, all I'm getting at is like we have a set amount of feats with the Kabuto fight, and then in the war arc as well, seeing EMS Sasuke and KCM Naruto, and around that point in time, like that KCM Naruto, we don't have a lot of context based upon where exactly his power level is, but if my memory is right and I can go back to that chapter, he does eventually reactivate the KCM power to like start tapping in and using it again. Because the way KCM operates is you have a set amount of power, you use it. Once it's depleted, you got to wait, and once you build up that chakra again, then you can use it, right? And that's
Yeah.
kind of just like how it works in it, and even with KCM too. So all I'm getting at is like maybe it's at full power or it's at least close to full power around that. So that's all I'm really getting at. And there's at least still relativity within those feats or those characters. So like I guess basically in short, if we have these characters all around that are doing similar things, at least interacting with this KC of Naruto, the Kabuto fight and then the EMS Sasuke and Naruto, then I would say that in a way is kind of establishing a certain level amount of feats. Um, Even if we're disregarding just the narrative statements, comparing Obito to Itachi and whatnot. That's the first thing. The second thing I can say, just for further substantiation with the first main claim with the narrative statements, is when it comes to the narrative statements, I guess like to rationalize it or make it seem a little more logical. The only reason why I don't think it necessarily could potentially just be like hearsay or just it's just statements and like and all this whatever, because typically in Naruto, like if you're more stronger or more powerful than someone, then you'll just apprehend the threat right away, and there normally doesn't need to be any negotiation or anything. Period. Right?
Right.
Or whatever. Or if you're at least made somewhat use of them, which Obito did do. He got a lot of use from Itachi. He had him helping the Akatsuki get money, all this stuff, capture Biju, whatever. He did enough as it is. All I'm getting at though is if like instead of like letting Sasuke take Itachi down and all this stuff, whatever, at any point in time, Obito could easily just teleport and appear right where Itachi is, and they could just go right there and then. And there's no time for planning, basically, is what I'm getting at. The
Right.
same thing, even worse, would even apply when they first had the negotiation conversation. Where they had that whatever, and at that point in time, like he because he just know him, right? He doesn't really know that much. He wouldn't even have any advantage of prepping or like prep time or whatever, and he could just deal with them right there. Basically, because when Obito interacts with people through the series of Naruto, he either just flat out like threatens them and says, "I'm gonna, kill you" or whatever, or if they're worthy of an opponent, then he's cautious and won't risk it, right? Or like because he doesn't want to either die or lose or suffer like some drastic consequence. Um,
Right.
So I just feel like if he has all these opportunities to kind of deal with Itachi, because Itachi was a threat, um, and because he was at least perceived as a threat and so on and so forth, that's why he was at least utilizing him in the Akatsuki. Because it's like, it's that phrase where keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Yeah.
And it's kind of along that logic. So like, if he has him around there, basically might as well make some use of him, even if you're on opposing sides, because you're both are technically winning in some regard, right? So like, but eventually it gets to a point, and the whole point of the Akatsuki was to just get out the Biju and do the Infinite Tsukiyomi. And if Itachi is a burden to that or hindrance, which he was, because that was stated, it would be more at least beneficial in a certain regard at a certain point. I wouldn't say from beginning, but at a certain point through the series, especially with his disease and everything, whatever, especially him being sick, like he might as well just take out the threat because there's no point, right? He doesn't have any more use for him. Yet he was still cautious or whatever, you name it, the whole nine. So
Right.
like basically, I guess in a simple consensus, what I'm getting at is if we're looking at the Kabuto fight, the war arc feats, which are in correspondence with KCM Naruto, and then at least with the narrative stuff, I would at least say that like Itachi would at least have to either bare minimum, not necessarily saying equal, but have some relativity regard. Because if he didn't, um, then he should just be easily disposable, whatever. Like basically, like before he could even do anything, he would just be killed. But then well, I won't say that ties into the whole jutsus and what's it called, an abilities section. But I guess like that's really I'm trying to fucking think if I can
Yeah.
add anything a little bit further for the physical stats part, because I do have another thing that's going to help with the speed thing, but that's not necessarily physical stats. Uh, let me just think real quick, because we don't really get that many showings with a it's just really the Killer Bee shit, um, the KCM Naruto stuff. Well, there's those feats too, I guess I can bring up. So, we obviously know like Killer Bee is not like obviously like V2 Raikage level, right? Or
Yeah.
full KCM level. But he's at least relative to KCM Naruto's to a certain regard. And we do see him having exchanges as well with Naruto. And then at least when we see Rinnegan Obito, and things like that, like we eventually see, to be fair, this Obito is not at full power though. He is nerfed, but what's it called? Like either way, he's still fighting against KCM Naruto, and this KCM Naruto is also not at full power and very nerfed because he's been using the power for a hot minute, like in this whole fight with Obito, you name it, the whole nine, whatever. So like basically, what I'm getting at is like we see um a KCM Naruto, he eventually interacts with that Obito, and they have like their whole fight, and that KCM Naruto was either at full power or at least close to a certain extent. To be fair, I would have to look at that actually. It depends if like that was either because I know when he talks with Itachi, he runs out fully, right? Like after the whole fight with Nagato, he's out, he's gassed out. But then there's like a time skip moment to where eventually he's back in the power, but he's with Killer Bee, and that's when he has his fight against Obito, right?
Yeah.
So I just don't know if there was a point where he did use anything when he was not full, or if he was at full at that point. But either way, he's at either close or full. But he has his interaction with Obito, and he's fighting them all, and all the Biju are being amped and shit. But the fight drags on, but there's still like competitiveness, is what I'm getting at, right? There's like still blatant relativity or equal, however you want to perceive it. And then eventually, it just kind of goes on from there. And this is an Obito, like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, I know how far this Obito is, whether if he's way more stronger or if he's comparable to Orange Mask, but there at least has to be some margin or level of comparability, because I will say this, that there's a Minato statement that's said by Minato where he tells Naruto flat out, hey, you need the Nine Tails power to confront this guy, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise you're probably gonna be fucked, because we know how much of the Nine Tails power can amp Naruto, etc., in the whole speed shit and what Jay brought upon. So at least what I'm getting at is we can't know the quantifications at certain points, but we either know that the character could be close or maybe at full, but there's at least relativity being demonstrated for the most part between Obito, KCM Naruto. Um, then we have the Kabuto and Sagema with EMS Sasuke, and then all that with EMS Sasuke and Naruto and things like that. I guess that's like really all the dots I'm connecting, at least for feats wise. And if we see that Itachi can be able to fight against that Sage mode, Kabuto, along with, Sasuke, et cetera, et cetera. That's really what I'm getting at,
Right.
And we know Sasuke was at full power in that fight too.
Yeah.
But,
All right. So
yeah.
yeah. So to counter that, I'll start out with the feats that you use to try to establish that it's not simply just narrative implications and hearsay. The Kabuto feats. So I think context is important to acknowledge. So as we know, I can pull up the manga if necessary. Itachi could fight unrestricted. He can't die. Obviously he has no more binding to the Edo Tensei due to Kodo Matsukami, so he could fight with full effort. And additionally, he did tell Sasuke, "Do not kill Obito. Excuse me, do not kill Kabuto. You must be less aggressive. You're gonna end up killing him." Hence, for one, Sasuke was not going all out. So I think trying to compare their performances against Kabuto is again a false equivalency, not analogous, because they both weren't using full effort. Additionally, Itachi didn't have to worry about being killed or controlled because he's an Edo Tensei, while conversely, Sasuke could die. Again, Kabuto did say, I don't want to kill him. He's like valuable to me. But even so, the point that he had to be less aggressive to not kill Kabuto still stands. So, and I would say that this similar performance doesn't prove that they're relative in power. Firstly, because again, Sasuke was certainly more restricted, and Itachi was backpacking that. I mean, even Kabuto even says, "Oh, you're not even told Itachi, you're not even at your best because you keep defending, protecting Sasuke, and you're not at your best right now." So Sasuke was definitely doing less of the work, more restricted, could die. Even if you say, oh, Kabuto didn't want to kill him, the possibility still existed. The possibility for Edo Itachi literally did not exist. There was no restrictions. There was no possibility of him losing his life due to being immortal, or Edo Tensei more specifically. Additionally, using EMS Sasuke and KCM later on in the war, I would say, is also a false equivalency when comparing to that EMS Sasuke specifically, because they clearly grow in power. And I would argue at the beginning of the war, simply put, Naruto is just more powerful than EMS Sasuke when comparing their performances and comparing, when analyzing the context. So again, I've said this multiple times, but I'll say it again just to reiterate. When Naruto was battling Edo Itachi, he was fatigued and he was in conversation. The only time we see any type of altercation between Sasuke and Itachi is when Sasuke tries to grab him with his Susanoo arm and Itachi slaps it away. That's the only time there's some sort of altercation between them. So simply put, Naruto's just more impressive. He's just superior. It's even later sort of emphasized when Sasuke's like hating on him and saying, "Oh, so this is the power you've reached. This is the level you've reached." When you're seeing him, manipulate and use the Nine Tails power to its fullest, extent. Additionally, when using the Obito feats as well, again, I would argue that context matters. Obito had the Jinchuriki rather doing a lot of the work, and even then Naruto was struggling to quite an extent. He didn't really get the jump on Obito until later on when he was aiding Guy and Kakashi, and he unlocked an entire new transformation, which allowed him comfortably to utilize the Nine Tails Chakra, which, as we all know, is KCM2. There, he's clearly stronger, mental amp, perfect synergy with Kurama, befriended Kurama. Everything's just in his favor at this point in time. So I'm bringing all this up to establish the fact that none of these feats, nor moments, nor whatever you want to call them, empirical pieces of evidence reinforce the notion that Obito deemed Itachi as a threat when Itachi was alive. Because again, when I introduced the actual context and the parameters of all these moments, the EMS and Itachi fight versus Kabuto, Naruto versus Obito, etc., it actually illustrates that you can't make comparisons between KCM Naruto, EMS Sasuke later in the war, and Itachi respectively due to the substantiation I just presented. Now, to go back to the narrative implications to try to dissect and negate that, Obito, he did see Itachi as a threat. Clearly, that's pretty much definitive. He wouldn't have worked with him, like Batman said, if he wasn't a threat, right? That's nonsensical. That's contradictory. Essentially, again, I'm going to reiterate my interpretation. The reason he worked with Itachi was due to the secrets he had, was due to the intelligence he had, and simply put, my opponent said, well, why didn't just Obito just calmly in front of his face and take him away? because he didn't know what Itachi had in store for him if that were to take place. Itachi is like this Batman type persona in this verse. If Obito were to do this, he would obviously be aware of Itachi's contingency plan for him, right? I mean, it's clear that he had a contingency plan. We saw it when he died, and he put sort of that contingency plan into place when Sasuke had his eye and the Amaterasu was activated and almost killed Obito. Obito always knew that Itachi had a contingency plan. And I'm not saying Itachi is complete fucking fodder and that's a slaughter, but I am saying Obito is still superior. But that gap and that threat exists because of his intelligence, because of his possible contingency plan, because of the type of mind he has, right? And the type of abilities he has. The Tsukuyomi, the Amaterasu, the femoral genjutsu, which just requires his finger to point at you. The exploding shadow clones, the finesse, all that, the genjutsu mastery in general. So again, I would say my interpretation is more likely, again, due to the feats that are definitive when analyzing the context. Teenage Obito was already relative to a live Minato, while conversely, prime, near prime Itachi was struggling, was while bloodlusted, was competing with a casual, heavily fatigued Casey and Naruto, during his time as an Edo. That right there displays a discrepancy in ability between Minato and Itachi in his theoretical prime. Again, and that's a weaker. Well, I don't know. Excuse me. We're talking about Minato here, not Obito. But yeah, so Minato and Itachi, there is a discrepancy between them. The narrative implications can just simply be turned into an alternate implication, which I think is more, with mine being more probable than my opponent's. Again, with the layers of substantiation I've presented, so hence my speed scaling still holds, and it is certainly the more probable. It is certainly the more probable speed scaling, which again, that being Minato is substantially faster than Itachi, with the contentions I just presented, and the more, I would say, efficient and concrete empirical evidence and substantiations I've presented as well. So that's what I'll say about that. If you want to counter that or move on to the next point or whatever, it's up to you though.
Yeah, no. I think we said a good amount around that, at least regarding for like the physical stats.
Yeah.
The only thing I could really at least get upon when it comes to Itachi and then and Minato and mind you, I'm going to be bringing up Obito, guys, because Obito is a blatant scaling correlation to Minato. That's the only reason why he's even being discussed. But so I guess like the only thing I could really say is with Orange Mask Obito, like, because here's an interesting aspect of it. Like when it comes to KCM Naruto, like fucking what's really weird with him is like there's really not like even Obito as an example, like there's not really any character like that gets shown to be like blatantly, at least, and I mind you, I'm saying like physical stats wise.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about abilities or anything else, whatever that can make up for it, but physical stats wise, like Obito, he's like kind of another example in a way. And what I mean by this is like when we see Obito um fighting against like that was what it was, Donzo's henchman. Like he's using his physical body stats alone. Like he's not even, whatever. And like there's somehow like there is like somehow like a comparable fight in some at least that's what it's like objectively showing in a sense. But and then eventually at some point Obito just does calmly and then he just disposes them, whatever, right? It was like a low diff fight basically, unless you like think it was absolutely no diff. But but what I'm getting at is Orange Mask Obito, he doesn't really have tons of feats either. It's mainly just like that. It was literally just the Donzo henchman, then the Konan. But like it's weird with Konan because we obviously know he wasn't trying to kill her, because he needs intel, right, for the Renegon and stuff to get it for the war. But at the same time, he could still move basically at full speed without having to kill someone. Is what I'm getting at. Like you could still move at full speed. You would just obviously have to restrict your AP, right, or whatever you're doing, and or just do like a non-lethal blow instead of a lethal blow. So like, but either way, like when he's fighting against Konan, he does like calm or whatever, and then eventually he does his physical speed, and he does blitz Konan, which makes sense. It's fucking Conan, right? But all I'm getting at is like when we analyze Obito, we don't really get to see like a direct, exact like feats performance with him, like physically wise. And even when we analyze Minato and Obito, like we see that they both are very comparable, right? And so on and so forth, and they have a death match and you name it. Um, but like we still don't know exactly where like they entail when it comes to the physical stats realm too, because when we think about it overall, like same thing with Minato, like when he's fighting the Raikage, he had to use Flying Raijin. He doesn't just do like a body flicker or even using like just normal. Because there's three levels of speed you have. You have like your physical stats, and body flicker, which is your max physical stats, and then there's like hacks, right, that can make you do all kinds of shit, right? And for
Yep.
Minato, it'd be Flying Raijin. Obito would be Calm Weight, and etc. Or Itachi, it would be like Susanoo, etc. Right? So those are the three speed factors that you have. And when we have Minato in the Raikage, he has to do the Flying Raijin, and then when he reappears at the Flying Raijin, yeah, he's grabbing the kunai, and then he's going to like go stab him basically. But he's at Raikage's blind. It's basically similar to what he does to Obito, right? He's at his blind spot, and now he has like that extra cushion time, and Raikage really can't react or move or anything because he's literally in motion of punching, and Minato's already like moving and so on and so forth. Like so what we blatantly see with Minato is that he just clearly has the advantage, right? Because he's taking his back and he's going to do the final blow. Okay. While with Obito, he did a rising on instead of a fucking kunai. So what I'm getting at is the Raikage. That's all we really basically see. And he does it again too. When he goes to dodge his fastest punch, he has to use the Flying Raijin again. He's not just using his normal stats, or whatever. And then he reappears behind B. You know.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So what I'm getting at is for the Raikage and Minato, we don't really know whether if they could physically be even or not. We have no idea. We just know it was because of Flying Raijin, then he could get the advantage. While with Obito, we know they were physically even, and because of Flying Raijin, he was able to get the killing or the finishing blow, right, to decide to win the battle. Is what I'm getting at. So like that's where things get really vague and interesting. Um, and what I'm getting on that is like when we're talking about these characters and then trying to correspond them to KCM Naruto, there's a certain amount of vagueness because with KCM Naruto, all we know, bare minimum, is that when he does his body flicker, which is his second level of fastness of speed, he's able to also outrun V2 Raikage's power. And obviously, this Raikage would be stronger than the one that fought Minato, right? So there's that. We don't know how much more, but he would be to some degree he'd be stronger. So we know the body flicker can at least deal with V2 Raikage's physical speed, and Flying Raijin can, and things like that. So that again, that's where like this gets a little bit kind of fuzzy when we're analyzing just direct physical stats. Um, so I guess that's what I'll put out there. And so for Obito and Minato, it's kind of in a same similar regard. Like unless you're like the Sonning or even lower than that, we know blatantly with the evidence that me and Jay know, what's it called, that they would have to be directly above even physical stats, whatever, right? Because and even the feats. But when it comes to people, when we talk about the next level up, which is people like Itachi, Nagato, Minato, obviously, V2 Raikage, etc. Like these are like really high tier level characters because they're practically known for their speed in a general consensus. Like for and that's what it is. And there's also like a similar narrative establishment as well. Because like we see Minato's blatantly above the Sonic, right? We don't see it like in a direct fight or compare. To be fair, the only thing that shows it is the game, where he does fight Hiruzen and Jiraiya and he wins. But either way, if we're just sticking to manga only and anime only, there's none of that. It's just statements, right? And that's why you would put him above. While for Itachi, we don't see a whole thing. He mainly just beats him with Genjutsu, right? Visual. And then when we get to the next thing, it's like somewhere in part one where Orochimaru just flat out says Itachi's just stronger than him, right? And if you think about that, that would have to also enact to physical stats, because if it wasn't, then all Orochimaru has to do is just counter visual fucking Genjutsu, right? That's simple, and he would beat him. But clearly that wasn't the case, because if it was, then he would do that. He just flat out says, I can't fuck with that guy, you know? And it makes sense because there's certain levels of power within Naruto, and basically the Sonic, like the mid Kage, and then you have the high Kage, which is like people like fucking Obito, Itachi, and Minato, and things like that. So like in a general consensus is what I'm getting at. with the narrative statements that we at least have when it comes to Obito and Itachi, um, that I feel like is a good one. I will respond to all the feat stuff where he says false equivalences and whatnot. Um, but if we have that, and then at least just talking about even the vagueness, even with Minato as well alone, um, and Obito, that's where things get a little bit tricky. Like basically, what I'm getting a simple consensus: it's hard to gauge if they also have like a direct like physical stat comparison to like Max, KCNR, or whatever. When every time we've seen them mainly reacting, it's them using their hacks abilities basically, and this is kind of shown also in the war too. Like when we see running on Obito fighting Casey Naruto, he's using Kamui mainly the whole time, and then he goes to once like Naruto's pinned down because like with the support of all the BG and whatnot, then he's gonna like absorb him, and that's when Kakashi and Guy come and save the day. But like either way, like we see that it's mainly him doing hacks, right? That's his whole thing. And then same thing with Minato. Like, yeah, he'll fight whatever, but until he gets a mark on you or he's using flying Raijin, he's not necessarily coming on top unless he's blatantly above you, right? Like when we're talking people like the Joning or Sonic. So that's where things just get, because we don't really have feats with neither of those other characters too. It's mainly just statements implicated or them having really good hacks feats and so on and so. Or like Jay said, then you have context where there's all these things going on. So like they're not necessarily like starting full out at full power, right? So it's really kind of hard to gauge what could be what, whatever. But they're still doing the same fighting style. You know what I mean? Like they're moving, doing their hacks, whatever, so on and so forth. So again, like I guess like that's would be like the last main counter I would really have, because if we're talking about like Itachi, I guess not having enough or direct, objective, that you could technically still argue the same would apply for Minato, and for Obito. That's basically what I'm getting at. Um,
Yeah.
that's where things just get like a little tricky. But yeah, that's all I'd say. What's it called? I'll try to respond to the war arc and the other things that Jay said, like the false equivalence or whatever concept, whatever you name it. But I want to let Jay like respond to that first. This way, nothing
Yeah.
goes. Yeah.
So I'll say this about the claim that that Minato's, to be specific, movement speed is vague, and because of that, we kind of established that he'd be able to physically strike Itachi successfully. So a very clear, blatant display of his physical movement speed, as Batman has stated, body flicker is a indicator of that. When he arrives to the battlefield, went to help Naruto and company, he gets there substantially faster than the other Hokage level individuals, which include, of course, Hashirama himself, Tobirama, and Hiruzen, and even Tobirama admits, "Wow, your body flicker is better than mine." Right, and this includes Hashirama. Again, he wasn't in stage mode or anything of that matter, but Hashirama is extremely powerful, even in base, as we all know. So
Facts.
hence his physical movement speed, which is blatantly on display there, with him clearly being in quite the hurry. Despite it not being in a combat, he's not in combat when he's doing this, but he's clearly in a hurry and essentially sprinting there. But this is like the Shinobi version of sprinting. He gets there substantially faster than Hokage level, including a high Kage level, specifically with Hashirama, individual, indicating that his physical movement speed is vast. Um, he's able to teleport away, Bijou bombs as well. He has the physical movement speed to like get away from it before it explodes. So I would counter and say his speed is not vague, and as far as his physical movement speed, it is quite fast and quite superior to the vast majority of the Shinobi world. Hence, with that level of speed, I would say, on top of his flying Raijin, of course, he would have more than substantial speed to strike Itachi, who again was reacted to by a casual, fatigued KCM Naruto, and Killer B, who was only in base. He did use his tentacle or whatever, but he was in base. He wasn't even in V2, and he was reacting to Itachi as well. Bloodlusted Itachi, again, who had his will removed by Kabuto. And for those that say, well, he wasn't using MS, what this proves is that in character, he doesn't use MS when in taijutsu exchanges. He uses it when he's using Susanoo, yes, but again, he's still bloodlusted. He's still going all out. He's still acting out Kabuto's will. So yes, he is bloodlusted, and he's doing what he would do in character if his will and his goals aligned with what Kabuto wanted. Right? That's essentially what's happening. So Minato, yes, is substantially faster than Itachi in every speed metric you want to use colloquially or officially, whatever you want to call it. The physical movement speed, the perception speed. I mean, his perception was able to casually perceive light speed attacks from, the Reikage, with again Itachi, as I have established, is not capable of doing. He doesn't have any light speed feats. Again, the KCM combat exchanges in Edo doesn't prove that. Nothing in his career proves that he is light speed, while conversely, Minato has blatant light speed, perception speed, and substantial high Kage level physical movement speed, which is above Itachi's level, as again, if I have proven. As well, I would say this inductively, you don't need a vast set of empirical data to establish a conclusion. When there is a limited set, because I do agree, there's a limited set of empirical evidence on someone like Minato. Obviously, he died very early in the story. He's not in the story until the war arc. Itachi, he's sick and shit. He's not even in his prime until he's in Edo. The way logic works is if you have even a sliver of empirical evidence, the most rational conclusion, the most rational course of action is to go based off that piece of empirical evidence. And if you were to ignore it, you would be on the losing side and you'd potentially be appealing to ignorance. So induction is still a more verifiable and trustworthy source of logic in comparison to assuming, which is an appeal to ignorance essentially most of the time. So all in all, despite data being limited, Minato and his speed is not vague when you use induction and you use him getting, again, to the battlefield faster, substantially faster, not only a little bit, enough to have a conversation with his son and Sakura before Kage level individuals, including a high Kage in Hashirama, would prove that he is substantially faster than Itachi, even while bloodlusted, even while in his prime. So all in all, it's not vague. It's quite clear. But I'll allow my opponent to respond to that and try to counter the false equivalence stuff I said earlier. So
Yeah, no, absolutely, bro.
yep.
Very good argumentation and logic. So I'll have to re-clarify then. What's it called? So basically, when I say it's vague with Minato and Obito, which it is, but when I say that, I'm referring to when we see Minato before the war arc, not during the war arc. And the reason why is because the war arc, that technically is a disconnect, and I would at least argue is a false equivalence. And the reason why is because that Minato is the one that has the Nine Tails power within him. I'm gonna send the scans as well because I feel like this might come up. And unless this is like really decide upon whether if this is the case or not, then therefore then that would be right. Because what I'm getting at is the Minato without the Nine Tails power is the one that's vague and in question, right? We don't really know what his physical stats is really that capable of. We only know it's above the Soning and Joning, but when it comes to high Kage level opponents like Obito, Nagato, and things like that, whatever, and Itachi, that's where it gets a little vague and tricky, right?
Right.
So I'm talking about that particular Minato, and obviously, and Obito would still be the same because he doesn't have no fucking nines. All he really gets is a Rinnegan, and you can argue that actually hinders him more than helping him. But regardless, and I'm gonna get those scans and show them. But for the Minato thing, basically the main claim is that's a stronger Minato, while the Minato during the Nine Tails incident is basically far weaker than that. Flying Raijin, that won't change obviously, but when it comes like the physical stats or body flicker, because again there's two levels of speed, your normal speed that you're using and then body flicker, right? That's would be what's in question and basically changing based upon those two different forms of Minato. And I'm gonna send those scans as well, but at least the reference points just to bring up so everyone can hear. What's going especially like I don't know, it depends how the video is presented if anyone posts this debate. But the first reference is when Lady Chio is talking about how a Jinjuriki works and whatnot, and how its power resonates with the Biju and you name it. Jinjuriki is the human host with the Biju, by the way. That's the first lead up. The second thing, it's even reinforced in Boruto, to where Kurama is talking with Naruto, and he makes a statement about how it affects his body, whatever, blah blah. And basically what I'm talking about is when you have the Nine Tails power or even a Biju, it can basically amp your base physical stats. Is what I'm getting at. But yeah, that's a second reference point where there's a statement with that. And mind you, I'll show all these scans for Jay. This way he can engage each one or talk about it. Um, and then the third point that's made is when Naruto is talking with Paul and the old frog. They also talk again about how the Nine Tails power works with the body, and you name it, and so on and so on, and what Minato's intentions were. So there's that as well. And then I like there's feats basically to try to substantiate this on top of it, to where when we see Naruto with the Nine Tails, like he's able to do really impressive feats in base against Momo, like really crazy high powerful fucking people. And then and so on and so forth, or even against someone like Teneri, who's also another 6 pass level threat and whatever you name it. And things like that. But then the moment he loses the Nine Tails power, what's it called? Now he's like way, way more at risk, and basically many people would be above him, and there would be a threat to where he'd just be killed, and there's no point of fighting. In his base, basically, and he would have to automatically resort to even using Sage mode, which would just give him any chance remotely at all. Which even with Sage mode, he was still considered to not be able to do certain actions and functions in the Boruto narrative against certain people. So that's basically what I'm getting at. It's like that's the main claim to where. So just to re-summarize it, and I'll get the scans as well. But the Minato during the Nine Tails incident, that's a separate power level, while the one in the War Arc is actually way amplified. And we know with the Edo, they're also like close to their original power too. So there's that as well. But yeah, so like, and he's mainly the feats that he performs there is only possible because he has the Nine Tails within him, is what I'm getting at. While the feats he has without the Nine Tails, he's clearly like we see what he's able to do. He fights against someone like Obito, whatever you name it, right? And that's the main thing I'm getting at. But and as for like the War Arc feats, when it comes to like the Itachi and Kabuto fight, the Obito thing, and then even the Sasuke and Naruto, I'll eventually get to that as well and respond with that and try to have a direct analysis. But this is obviously the most important thing because without this, then none of that even matters. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Okay. So, oh, sorry,
yeah.
you're not done yet.
Oh, no, my bad, bro. Yeah, no, I gave like a fucking. No, you're good. Yeah, no, you can respond, and I'm gonna get the scans for you.
Okay, so to counter that this Minato is, using the Edo Minato is false equivalency and not analogous because he has the Nine Tails in him. I would counter by saying this: it's very clear, especially with Naruto being the poster boy for Jinchuriki, he's always being the main character, that the Ninetales and Naruto have two separate chakra networks. They're connected, but they're separate. It's very apparent that when he's not having any Ninetales chakra seeped into him, he's fodder, especially in part one. He's complete fodder. And as soon as he gets any sort of, even a sliver of the Ninetales chakra into him, that's when he's amped. So I don't think there's any indicator explicitly that proves that even your base is improved upon. I mean, Naruto was ass. In fact, it hindered his ability to be a shinobi early on. It stated, even Kakashi stated, I could find that manga panel if necessary. He states the reason your chakra control is so ass is because of the Nine Tails. So when you're in base, you're not able to use your chakra efficiently. And although you do get more power due to the Nine Tails, it's hindering your ability to evolve as a shinobi in any way, shape, or form. So in fact, it actually hinders his base, not amps it. So I would argue that Edo Minato barely acquiring this and barely being resurrected would certainly not be amped, especially not in base with there being no indication that not the Ninetales is helping him until he activates KCM, that he is being amped when he's arriving to the battlefield. I don't think that there's any influence on his power level or his physical stance in any way, shape, or form. And I think Naruto's story and the fact that he was hindered when in his base in comparison to when he's being amped by the actual chakra being seeped into his own network, respectively, proves that, in fact, it actually hindered him. It didn't actually help him in any way, shape, or form. I would argue that Minato, when using the Boruto feats, for example, Momoshiki is not a taijutsu type opponent, so it doesn't really say much that Naruto's able to beat his ass when they're in taijutsu exchanges at all. That's the reason why they decided to engage in taijutsu, is because that's his weakness, and they exploited it by, not using any ninjutsu whatsoever. That was his specialty, and that's where the power really came from. So essentially, my substantiations prove that, in fact, a nerfed, well, I mean, all the Hokage were nerfed, but a slightly nerfed Minato was able to display this level of speed, arriving to the battlefield again substantially faster with no indicator of the Nine Tails amping him in any way. It's not passive, and again, there's proof via contradiction that it can hinder you when the tailed beast that is within you respectively doesn't like you, right? Like Koroma, he hated humans, especially early on. It hindered Naruto's ability to become a shinobi, and he was fodder, he was ass, he was horrible in the academy for a long time. He had, I think, 3 times to fucking pass the academy test. So in fact, it's to the contrary, it actually hinders your ability to be a shinobi. And again, there's no indicator that the Nine Tails aided Minato in any way until he activated KCM. So I would say that's not true via proof via contradiction. But I think that was all that was stated by my opponent. I'll let you counter that or get to the false equivalency or move on to the next aspect of scaling if you want. It's up to you though.
Yeah, no, absolutely, bro. What's it called? I'm about to send the scans right now.
Yeah.
And then I'll just like re-explain um the relevance of these scans and because again the claim that's being made and what's in question is whether or not if the Nine Tails power amplifies your base stats.
Yeah.
What's it called? And that's where I'm gonna pull through real quick. I'm just gonna get this through. And basically these scans is just a mixture of feat. It's the statements to support the claim. And then there's the feats of showing like Naruto when he doesn't have the Nine Tails and when he does have the Nine Tails. But let me get that real quick.
All right. I think Shinobi was in here earlier, but he left.
Yeah, no, he was in here, bro, but he like just dipped. He probably had to go because of work or some shit, to be honest. But anyone in chat, while there's some dead air, if you guys want to comment, ask questions for Jay,
Yeah. If you guys
or
want to
give your
ask anything,
thoughts, by all means, man. Yeah.
yeah, go ahead. See the chat.
And I'm sending these scans in scans channel. I didn't know really where to send them, but
Oh, okay, yeah, you're good there. Yeah. Let's see.
Let me
Right.
get one more thing.
All right. All right, yeah, I see him now. All right, cool. All right, folks, you guys should be able to see it on the stream, I think. Yeah, you guys can. Okay. All right, so these are the scans, folks. I'll show you
Getting
guys
a
too.
yeah. There's just only got, and I'll explain the relevance. I know it's a lot of scans, but I'll explain why it's very simple and what it all is basically. Come on. Alrighty, so those are the final two. Okay, so the first thing, the first scan that we have, where she's basically talking about the Biju and the Jinchuriki. So she says that Jinchuriki is capable of incredible power by resonating with like their Biju, and then including Gaara. There has been Jinchuriki in the sensei. 1 second, hang on.
Oh, good. All right, folks. So far, so good. So far, so good with the debate. Been a ossified debate as well, so good to get back into it. Any questions?
I'm about to have a fucking psychopath in the background. Anyways, so basically that's like the first statement. And the second statement is oh yeah, right here. So it's in the bottom of the pen. Everything else is just really them talking. But it's in the bottom left panel where he says, "It's it. Well, I've got to go, but be real careful. You ain't gonna have superhuman strength anymore. So if you overdo it, you'll end up joining me in no time." That's the second one. And then the third one, this is when he's talking to Paul, and the frogs and whatnot. And basically where it says the fourth Hokage constructed that seal so that a little bit of chakra continuously leaked out of the Nine Tails cage. to be skimmed off in the hopes of naturally becoming one with Naruto's chakra. And then they start talking about like the seal and like the tag of war stuff, and basically like how to like when Naruto learning this is basically before he does the KCM training is what I'm getting at. But the main important thing in this scan was the middle part. Um, what's it called? But that's the three, which kind of like correlates to the main claim of like how the nine tails of power can amplify your base stats. With those three statements. And then the feats to try to substantiate it is like when we see Fuse Momo as an example. Tenari is another one too, but that's a movie. But when we see Fuse Momo, Naruto in base, remind you, what's it called, was able to like to fight this Fuse Momo, whatever, because this Momo blitzed all the fucking Kage. But then Naruto and Sasuke were the only ones that could deal with him. And he's in base at this point, and he's like fighting whatever you name it. And he has like exchanges with them. He does eventually activate his Kurama cloak, but that's him at least having some base feats. And then to like try to reinforce this further, when we get to this is when he loses Kurama. Shikamaru is talking with them, and they're talking about a guy Code who's also like a really high level threat, Uzutsuki level. And he's like, I can't let you go alone. You don't have Kurama's power anymore. It'd be suicide. And sure, you could be like, oh, that's probably, because yeah, he can't use like the cloak, right? Or whatever, blah, blah, you name it, like his KCM amp and shit, whatever. But even in his base, he's still at least shown to be relative to his like KCM power is what I'm basically getting at. Like his base is still some of whatever, somewhat of a threat, basically, that, or it can at least be utilized against his opponents. But this Shikamaru is saying, hey, you don't got his power, you just shouldn't go, whatever. It just be basically suicide. And then Naruto argues with him, whatever. He's like, no, I gotta go. But what happens is Naruto uses Sage Mode, and he has to utilize that. So he's not just going straight into the battlefield like in base or whatever. He's utilizing Sage Mode. And his daughter said, like, well, will you be able to bring Bro and Kawaki back? And he's like, absolutely. He's like, do you know who your father is? And he activates Sage Mode. And then he even has like 2 clones on standby. And then like we see him have some Sage Mode feats where he saves Kawaki, and then he also saves Boruto while he's in Sage Mode and not in base. And basically, what I'm getting at is like, if he has to be in Sage Mode at all times, it's kind of similar like to the whole Pain arc and stuff, or whenever, or back in Shippuden where he had to heavily rely on Sage Mode because his base just wasn't enough, or it was too risky to utilize. Basically, because he's always in Sage Mode, that would just be further substantiation that like his base is just a non-factor at this point in the series, and against like these high level threats. While when he had the Kurama power, he could still utilize his base stats and be able to do at least fight back, whatever. And then if he deemed it necessary, he'll do the Kurama power just in case, right? And continue to fight. So that's basically all I'm really getting at. And at least with the 3 main statements of trying to indicate and prove the claim of like the power of the Biju resonating with them, and the one with the where the seal that Minato put, the chakra continuously leaks out, whatever, and then it's to naturally become one with Naruto's chakra. And then what Kurama says to Naruto, that without me, you won't no longer have your superhuman strength, and so on and so forth. So that's basically all I'm getting at. That's like all the correspondence.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and say like this has to absolutely be the case. I just feel like there's a lot of evidence to like at least disinsinuate the high probability that this would more than likely be the case. Because overall, when he has the power, he has great base feats. But when he doesn't, he can no longer even use his base, and it's just not. It's not needed anymore, right? Like that's the issue. Unless like fucking unless like we're talking about like fucking Sasuke, or actually, no, that's not what I was getting at. Yeah, so like, yeah, that is basically what I'm getting at. Like, it's this, that's what we have. It's just overall when he has Naito's power, he has better performance overall with his base form and so on and so forth. While without it, base is just not even an option, and that's just consistently shown through Naruto too. Like his base was never ever a fucking op. Like even when he fought Kakazu, he had to do like a slight QB amp, just to like do a Rising Shuriken, whatever, and you name it,
Right.
And so yeah, that's basically all I'm getting at, man.
All right. So again, via proof of your contradiction, I'm gonna counter my opponent's claim by saying the reason why post war arc, his base is so impressive is because Kurama is not the only tool at his disposal, as it is blatantly indicated during the war arc. He receives 6-pass amps from Hagoromo, and we see even in base what he's capable of. He kicks away he kicks away true seeking orbs like they're nothing, which was never displayed prior to that moment. They were like death traps that were taking out Hokage level fucking Edo Tenseis. As soon as he gets 6-pass powers, that's when his base is that impressive. And so I would argue that the reason he was so impressive against people like on the level of Momoshiki, etc., is because of his 6-pass amps, along with the Nine Tails, which he uses when he has to, like such as against Momoshiki when him and Sasuke got serious, when Momo was fused, for example, against Delta when he had to get serious taijutsu wise. He had to turn on the chakra cloak to enhance his durability and physical stats, etc. So the reason why his base was so impressive was because of 6-pass amps. Prior to that, his base was quite unimpressive. Again, like Batman said, against Kakuzu, he needed Nine Tails chakra seeped into his chakra knuckle, which was explicitly indicated via his eyes changing color, which was always the case. Against Neji, for example, he was ass in base, and as soon as he used Nine Tails chakra, he got the edge. There are many. There's a plethora of examples that show a substantial discrepancy between his base and his, when he gets a Nine Tails amp explicitly. And then again, once you reach the war arc, he gets 6-pass amps. So not only does he have Kurama at his disposal, he has 6-pass amps that greatly improved his base in every way, from his physical stats to his abilities, etc. He had new chakra releases and Bore release, and it's even implied that he got other tail beast abilities using Bore release and lava release and all these variations of Rasen Shurikens when fighting Madara. For example, Jubi Madara more specifically in Kaguya. So again, I would say it's a false equivalency to use the Boruto feat due to him having 6-pass chakra, and simply put, the reason why he was so ass afterwards, such as when he had to use Sage Mode, is because he also lost 6-pass after Kurama's death. It's very implied that Kurama was the link to these 6-pass abilities, and as soon as he lost it, his overall, from base to every ability he has in his disposal, depleted as far as power, as far as speed, all the physical metrics you want to use. Similar with Sasuke as well. As soon as he lost his Rinnegan, his abilities depleted as well. He was no longer able to defeat high-level 2C threats no longer as well, which shows that perhaps his Rene Sharingan was the link to his respective 6-pass powers, as he acquired them as well during the war arc. So simply put, it's also false equivalency to use Boruto feats, as again, he has 6-pass amps until Kurama's death, and he lost both after the death. He lost the 6-pass amps and as well as the Nine Tails power, more than likely via induction. But if you have nothing else, I'm okay. I'm okay. If you have anything else to add, though, feel free. I'm okay with moving on to another aspect. I know this is speed, basically. But
Yeah.
if you have something new, feel free. But I'm okay with moving on after.
Yeah, that was a great response. So yeah, like I'll say this to have like a distinction here. I definitely am not going to deny that 6-pass would help. That's I'll definitely put out there that the 6-pass could obviously be very useful, and be our equation as well. But do you think the 9 has a system aspect to it? And like again, it's just mainly like
I think you're lagging a bit, actually.
What was that?
I think you're lagging a bit on your side.
Oh, my bad. Let me know. I don't know what's. Am I okay now?
Let's see. Speak some more. Let me see.
Because you're also lagging on my end too. I hear your voice sounds robotic.
Let me see. Maybe it's me. Let me see real quick.
It could be me, but I'm hearing you be robotic too.
Let's see. I think it's clearing up now. Does it speak now?
Yeah, you're clear too. Yep.
Okay,
you're clear.
Yeah. I think it cleared up.
Okay.
Now. Good. Yeah.
No, my bad. But just to recap really quick. So, like, one distinction I will say is, like, yes, I absolutely agree with Jay. The 6-path would help, or whatever, blah, blah. I do think that is part of the equation, but I don't think that takes away from the 9 tails still being a factor to basically resonate with you and amplify your physical stats and so on and so forth. Because, like, with the 3 scans, like, there's that basically being said. And at least with the Kurama statement, like, he doesn't say it has anything to do with 6-pass or whatever. and so on and so forth. It's just mainly him saying that like without his power, like you're not yeah, like you said, be careful, you ain't gonna have superhuman strength anymore. Um because like he's dying or whatever. But to be fair, that could still be relevant because let's say if I guess the sixth path is linked with his, which I would also agree with Jay, more than likely is. That's a other can of worms, but what's it called? That's more likely the case. That's fine. I just would still argue and get at that the Nine Tails still has relevance. At least with those three statements that I'm giving. With the one when he's talking with the frogs, one with Lady Chio, and obviously the Boruto one, and then unfortunately because Boruto, what's it called, and the end of the war, that's the only time we actually see Naruto doing base feats is when he has the Kurama in the six paths. Like, ultimately that's all I can obviously really gauge upon. And the reason why it also makes further sense is because at that point in time, like when Naruto gets KCM2, he's able to like make full, use of the Akruma, whatever you name it, and then continue on and so on and so forth. Um, and that's why he's able to do a lot of like really, really good things. Minato was also able to do the same thing. He also was able to work with Kurama, have KCM2, whatever. He has the avatar just like Naruto, you name it, the whole nine. So like we don't see any of that, but he accomplishes obviously the same thing because he's able to perform the same thing. So like we have those two, but basically what I'm getting at is if Naruto is able to get to that point and like master Kurama and like have him fully intact or whatever you name it, that it would still stand because the Naruto that we see before, whether if it's during part one or if it's during the beginning of the war, he hasn't mastered Kurama in that aspect and he hasn't fully utilized it to how Minato even intended him to do it in the first place. So that's basically all I'm really getting at. It's mainly in correlation with when you have mastery of the full power of the Nine Tails. And yes, the six paths can definitely help that, but I still feel like it is corresponded to the Nine Tails power as well. And yeah, that's just what everything I presented. The only thing like furthermore to show is because if you really think about it, the minutes that we see in the Nine Tails incident and whatnot, and you see all that, like Hashirama was put like on a whole other realm of power. Like we know him and Madara are like no fucking joke. Like that's the next scaling above, basically, is what I'm getting at. If he was built like that scaling, basically, like he was already that high to where he's even able to fight base Hashirama, which technically corresponds to Madara as well, because Madara doesn't have any other form besides the sun, right? And base Hashirama is still very impressive. So like it's just it gets a little weird because if he was already that strong, especially Obito, then at those points, it just when it comes to even a discussion remotely of like Itachi being considered a threat or this and all this stuff in correlation and correspondence, and even Obito, like with everything he does, like what he does when he's with the five Kage, when he's against Danzo's henchmen, like all this stuff, it just none of it really makes sense because he wouldn't even need Kamui at all, basically is what I'm getting. Like if he's that physically stat in depth, like they will all just be non-factors. You know what I mean? Because Hashirama, even in base, in Madara as well, they were far beyond people like the Sanning or the five Kage, you name it, etc. So that's where it gets a little bit like uh I guess I would say hard to believe that they could already have that realm of power and physical stats speed wise. Um, but again, it's what's it called? That's at least all I can really get at. So I just feel like if Obito or Minato had that realm of power, not Minato because he dies early, but especially Obito because he does correspond to Minato, that therefore he should just be wiped in the floor, whatever. Like basically what I'm getting at, the war wouldn't be needed. He wouldn't be needing a Renegon. He wouldn't be needing all the like all. He would just solve the problems himself and he could just deal with everyone. But instead, whenever he's fighting, he's still having to rely on Kamui as a crutch. You use that along in corporation with his speed, etc. You name it. That's why I just, to me, it would make more logical sense that there more likely is a discrepancy and disconnection between the minutes that we see in the war with the Nine Tails power and the one that we see without. I guess that's all I can really say to further substantiate that, like reasoning wise. But other than that, Jay, unless you have a response, we can move on to the next thing. And the next thing is speed incorporated, but it's not physical stats, basically, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. So I'll say this to counter, and then we can move on. I'll say this: Obito doesn't use Kamui as a crutch. There's nothing to indicate that. I'd say it's more so of a convenience. It's a passive ability that obviously takes minimal to almost no chakra usage, and it doesn't require any stamina whatsoever. There's actually a panel, I can bring it up if you don't remember, where Ebizu describes stamina and chakra. They're separate things, and essentially this Kamui doesn't really use stamina debatably, and it's a passive ability that clearly he uses basically indefinitely, kind of like Gojo's Limitless, which is always on for the most part, unless you do the timer, which is like 5 minutes or something like that, then it turns off. It was more so a convenience, not a crutch. Clearly, he has to have the perception speed to utilize it when he does have to turn it on, such as against Obito, excuse me, such as against Minato, for example. So there is no negation or proof via contradiction that implies that because he uses Conway, his physical speed is inadequate to react to higher level individuals. It's simply just a convenience. And I don't think it really matters anyway, because in combat he'd use it anyway. It's in combat, and he'd use it to combat someone, and his that ability to be passive plus his perception speed would indicate that his what he's capable of, regardless of the colloquial term you want to use and what specific speed he's utilizing, is sufficient in fighting people like Minato, even from a teenage level of youth, which is extremely impressive. Well, again, I already said it 1,000 times, but Edo Itachi was competitive with a fatigued casual conversation, Casey and Naruto. Not getting to Minato with the Edo stuff and whether or not Kurama aided him. Again, I'll just reiterate what I said. Edo Minato with the other half of the Nine Tails inside of him. There's no indicator that it's aiding him in any way. Again, I proved via contradiction that Tailed Beast can hinder your ability to use the Nine Tails chakra, such as Naruto early on in the series when it was making him a worse shinobi as opposed to a better one when he's in base. There is no indicator that it helps you in any way, shape, or form when you're simply in base, and there is no indication of Nine Tails chakra seeping into you. As far as the scans that my opponents presented, they're talking about when the Nine Tails does help you. Going back to that, give me a second. I was looking at them right now. When it says Jinchuriki is capable of incredible power by resonating with their Biju. That's basically indicating when the Biju is aiding you and essentially giving you chakra and flowing it into your chakra network. That's when you're capable of incredible power. So essentially, that's the case. As far as the Paul conversation, he's talking about the theoretical possibility of Naruto mastering the Nine Tails, right? Because at this point, the two have some sort of conflict, and the Nine Tails is unwilling to, voluntarily give him power in a friendly manner. He does it when they're about to lose their lives, such as against, well, not I guess technically against Pain during the Pain arc. He has to give him power, that he probably would have been taken and killed, and the Nine Tails would have been killed as well. So essentially, there is no indication whatsoever that the Nine Tails helped you in base if there is no observational evidence, such as your eyes turning color, if there's no indication of your chakra network, there's no like statements being made or any observational indicators being made that the Nine Tails is intervening, such as with the Kakazu example, his eyes turn red. Against Pain, it was obvious he turned into a fucking tailed beast. Against Haku, he gained like the red aura chakra. Against Neji, same thing. Against Kim, there's a plethora of examples, and there's again via contradiction proof to the contrary that when you're in base, a tailed beast, unless he's best friends with you, like Killer B is with Gyuki, even then there's no proof that he's helping you as far as when he's not giving you chakra. There is no indication that your base is passively amped by this tailed beast, so there is no proof of that. I would say I could just kind of dismiss that via Hitchin's razor. I mean, I am attacking it anyway, but via Hitchin's razor, I can just disregard that. There is no evidence at all to indicate that. And I explored all the context of the moments in Naruto's career. Part 1, he was weaker in base. After the war arc, he had 6 past base, so he was way stronger than his base was prior to the moment Hagoromo gave him his powers. Minato had no indication of Nine Tails intervention, not until he and his son kind of synergized the Nine Tails power or whatever, and they worked together. Then clearly he got the cloak, and clearly he was being amped at that point in time. Also, as far as trying to establish the claim that Minato outspeeding Hashirama is sort of like illogical, because it would mean that he'd be at a level of Hashirama and Madara, I would say no, because he outsped base Hashirama. This wasn't Sage Hashirama. At that point, I don't think he'd be able to. Sage Hashirama was competing with Prime Madara, etc. He was able to outspeed base Hashirama, He was, and the other two, I think no one debates he's faster than Hiruzen and Tobirama. He's faster than those two. I think we can all agree with that. So I don't have any problem with saying Minato's speed is quite possibly superior to base Hashirama. I don't have a problem with that. At least when it comes to body flicker, I don't have a problem with that. I still think Hashirama overall is superior, obviously, especially due to Sage. That's a whole different kind of worms. I don't want to get into that. There's no point in that. That's kind of a red herring on my part. But yeah, that's the last thing I'll say about that. And hence, I think my speed scaling holds. But yeah, if you want to move on, we can to whatever point you want
Yeah,
to move on to. Yeah.
yeah, man. No, W. What's it called? That was good. The only thing I could say, as because otherwise there's no point in responding to the majority of it, because I would just go circular. The only other thing I will say is the comedy, comedy crutch, and then and one more, I guess, example. Like, so we do see when Naruto is like getting cooperation, and or especially when he befriends Kurama with the KCM2 stuff, that he can utilize the Nine Tails power while in his base. There's one moment when he's actually doing it against Edo, Madara, and Kabuto, where Kurama gives him a bunch of his chakra, and he'll use that, and then basically he's able to do like all these crazy amount of rising gons and clones, something he could never do in base, but he's able to do it because of getting the chakra for it. And so on and so and with that aspect, so like there's that example, and then there's the other example with Gumbunsa where he's using the Nine Tails chakra and his own as well. So to summon it, it actually shows both chakras, blue and red. So all I'm getting at is if he's able to incorporate that with his ninjutsu and so on and so forth, he could definitely would have incorporated it with his taijutsu and his body's physical stats. So that there's that. Another thing I remembered, I think Jay said something along the lines with like stamina chart, or like how like that could be separate with stamina. Whenever we see Itachi and use the MS abilities, or even Kakashi, he's an example too. Their stamina and chakra do get depleted. It is stated that they are connected. What's it called? Because if it was just only chakra, and Kakashi had stamina like as well, basically, then he would be perfectly fine along with like the other people. I could be maybe potentially wrong with that, but from at least my memory with the pain fight, he says he's all out of chakra, and stamina, or like he says both of them he'd be like completely depleted or wiped out or some shit like that, or like normally it's like hindering everything as a whole, and at least that's what I get. And then like with the Ebisu thing, because when they're explaining all that, like when they're talking, it says like when you're using ninjutsu or your chakra, it does connect to your stamina, in a way like it hinders that as well. Like they're both affected basically. And then when you do taijutsu, then that's just with your stamina, you know what I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
and things like that. But you could also use a chakra to enhance it too. But either way, that's that. At least in the final thing with the Obito as a kami as a crutch, like with that, when I say he's utilizing it as a crutch, like when we see in all his fights, like especially against Minato, like yeah, he's comparable to Minato or whatever, but there's many moments where he needs to use that in order to get the advantage. And then same thing with Minato, he has to do flying Raijin in order to get the advantage. You know what I mean? So like he is doing so whenever he's in competitive battles, he's always using that shit. He's never just solely relying on his physical stats or speed. Unless obviously if he's above someone, then yeah, then there you go, right? But normally if he's in a competitive regard, he has to. Or if someone is way more faster than him, then he'll have to do it as well, which we do see that with KCM2 Naruto. When Naruto's in KCM2, Obito, he has to either use his wood style or he has to use Kamui in order to survive. And anytime he tried to engage with Taijutsu, he got speed blitz with the headbutt and in the Kamui dimension. So it just, when it comes to Obito using Kamui as a crutch or whatever you name it, like particularly that is within his fighting style. And he'll do that if he's in a competitive regard with someone, or if someone is physically more enhanced than his body's physical stats. Because there's a difference between jutsu activation speed and your physical speed. That's the only thing I can really say on those things. Other than that, then I don't think there really be much to say for this whole thing that we discussed. I think we talked about it pretty long enough, but it was an
Yeah, we did.
important one though. It's very
Yeah,
important, but
probably
I'll
the
let
most
Jada
important.
respond to that. And then we'll get on to the last thing that's speed relevant, which I'm pretty sure Jay would also agree with.
Yeah, so I'll say this too in this specific segment, I guess you could say. KCM2 Naruto isn't I think he's irrelevant here and not analogous because he's faster than both these characters, point blank period in their primes. So there's that. So it doesn't prove anything that that Obito with the Rinnegan struggled. He's just faster than all these people that we're discussing. Secondly, I think it is I would say illogical to penalize an individual for their style of fighting. Obito uses the Kamui because again, it's convenient. Um, and again, because he uses it doesn't mean that his body speed is insufficient in combating these individuals. It's like we could penalize Minato for the same thing. He uses Flying Raijin heavily, even against much less capable opponents, because it's convenient. He can throw kunais everywhere and just cut people's throats effortlessly. Similarly to how Obito can just teleport anywhere and just calmly people away into the void of the Kamui dimension. So I don't think that proves anything. That's just their styles, and I think penalizing them for that is a non sequitur. I don't think it proves anything, nor negates anything, or negates my interpretations. It just what's clear as day is that Obito, from a teenage age, was relative to Hokage Minato, while conversely, Edo Itachi, while bloodlusted with his arsenal, was competing with a fatigued, casual conversation having Casey and Naruto. That just shows a discrepancy in speed. So all in all, I think as far as the speed, Leo established it, but yeah, I'm going in circles again. So I think we can, like Batman said, move on to the next segment.
Yeah, no, you're good, brother. What's it called? Only thing I can really add to that, there's really nothing more, is the whole Obito and KCM2 thing is what's it called? Like when we see Madara interact with KCM2, he can still respond to it casually, whatever. He responds to like a bloodlusted Biju bomb, throwing like a small rising on Biju bomb basically. And Madara just deals with it. While Obito, he always has to use Kamui or Wood style is what I'm getting. And then whenever there was Taijutsu exchanges, he just got blitzed. But and that's what you have. And then like even with KCM Naruto at certain points, throughout, whether if it's in the middle of the war, the beginning, whatever, he's having to use Kamui. He doesn't just straight up just outdo him with physical stats or whatever, so on and so on. And the reason why that matters is because he obviously corresponds to Minato. Because they had a very intense death match and they were both going basically blow for the most part. And it wasn't until Minato used the Flying Raijin to come on top. And that was just faster than his Kamui and all that. But anyways, other than that, I think that we did pretty well on that. What's the second thing that I would say for speed though would be obviously this is now incorporating jutsu activation. So regardless of whether or not what's it called, whether or not if I have Itachi in like the equal or relative and physical stats, and so on and so forth, or regardless if the whole Minato thing or whatever you name it. What I will at least say with this bare minimum is the Susanoo, the jutsu activation, that would be faster than his physical body. So that would at least allow him to make up. And we do see this blatantly by feats too. When we see MS, not even EMS, but when we see MS Sasuke against V2 Raikage, he could not fuck with that man physical stats at all. He had to use Amaterasu and Susanoo. And this was like the lowest versions of it too. Wasn't even like the peak or prime. Because there's different forms of it and so on and so forth, and it can get more powerful. So like, and his jutsu activation at least was fast enough. So meaning his neurons and all that, and like to turn on was at least fast enough to deal with the Raikage, and so on and so forth. So like, I will say that regardless of the whole physical stat and the whole if Minato's weaker or stronger comparing, during the Nine Tails incident or in the war arc, this could at least still be something he can utilize to at least help compensate. And that's if we're under the presupposition that, Minato does have the speed advantage just physical stats wise. But yeah, he would have Susanoo that he can utilize, which basically is it's going to keep pressure in the fight, is what I'm getting at. And this can basically allow like strategy at this point. And, as we all know, Tachi has, the Atomir, so that's going to be useful as well. And it's also stated verbatim. I can get it if I need to, but it's stated in the Danzo fight that Susanoo is way more faster than the user as well. And we kind of just see that throughout. We see that with, Sasuke V2 Raikage. We see that with Danzo, even him saying it, whatever. And we even see when Itachi had to use his Susanoo while sick and blind on his deathbed, he was able to summon it, respawn to cure it, and take the blow and everything. So I would at least say that. We do have that. That's why Susanoo is like really a problem. And the only time you could typically surpass Susanoo, which that we have seen, was actually shown through Boruto, where you just like vastly outscale your opponent, right? To where you could just kick right fucking through it, speed blitz, and doesn't fucking matter, But if there's any competitive regard, whether if you're equal or relative, good luck fucking breaking through that shit, especially a fucking Yadomir. You know what I mean? And we do know Minato, like, at least with his scaling and so on and so forth, to where, you know, we've seen him blatantly be demonstrated to be above the right Kage, right? His flying Raijin to, you know, to outspeed him and whatnot. And same thing with Obito. And we've seen that direct correspondence with Casey and Naruto and things like that. So that's basically all I'm getting at. So if we have like the V2, the KCM, all that stuff, whatever, and we've seen what Sasuke can do, et cetera, therefore that should be something he can utilize for defense purposes, right? So regardless if you know if you think he could do offense or not or physical stats. But do you have anything on that, Jay? Or
Yeah, so as far as perception, I'll say this. Perception is activation speed. Perception is anything. How fast does your neurotransmitter fire to execute any command your brain gives your body? For example, activate Tsukuyomi, throw a punch, activate Susanoo. And obviously those speeds vary because you don't need any physical movement to activate Susanoo. It just appears. Tsukuyomi as well. It just activates. Or Flying Raijin, it just activates. So that's all perception, firstly. As far as the Susanoo being a defensive problem for Minato, here's why it wouldn't matter. He's faster in every metric, including perception. I think I proved that earlier, and I'm not even going to say it again. His perception is superior to that of Naruto's. So all he would have to do is place a marking upon Itachi's back and then just appear in there and cut his throat. It wouldn't be much of a problem with the discrepancy of speed that I have established. It's in character for him to place markings on people. He did it to Obito and used it years later during the war as an Edo Tensei. Still there. He's very intelligent, obviously aware of what Uchihas can do. So I think this is where character demeanor starts to play a factor. He would be aware that this guy has a Sharingan. He'd be aware that this guy can use Genjutsu. So clearly he would try to attack his back. Even Chio says this when combating Sharingan users when her and company were facing Itachi in the forest. She says the best way to face one is to attack its back, to attack a Sharingan user's back. So he would place a marking or use a kunai to get behind him, whatever the case may be. You can be inside Susanoo's. We've seen it in the war. Jugo was inside Sasuke's. We saw it during the Kaguya fight. You know, people were inside DMS Kakashi's. You can be inside someone else's Susanoo. It is possible. So that's all you would have to do. The Susanoo wouldn't be a problem. The Yodomir is omnidirectional. All you would have to do is get behind Itachi, do what he has to do. I'll get into AP later, but he has the ability to one-shot Itachi via one-shot scaling, via the Minato one-shot scaling. He would destroy him, and that'd be it, and kill him. So his perception is also superior. His flying Raijin, the instantaneous nature of it, would be very, very advantageous here to get behind Itachi. With the physical movement speed also being superior, instantaneous hacks plus superior movement speed plus superior perception is just an all-in-all win as far as the speed category is concerned. So all these hacks just wouldn't matter anyway because Itachi's simply too slow to utilize them in time in comparison to Minato and Abanza probabilities. So that's what I would say, simply put, for that, for the Susanoo and all that stuff, if you want to say anything against that.
yeah, no. What's it called? Yeah, so that makes sense. If it's under that presupposition, basically, obviously, that would make logical sense. But yeah, this is just under the premise because obviously, again, we know jutsu activation is far way more than the user, than their physical stats. And at least as I said before, with like the Minato and whatnot, whenever we see him using physical stats, we clearly see what he's capable of, which is being on a similar level of Yellow Mask Obito and things like that. And unless it's him using Flying Raijin or Kamui, then that's where it's just like even beyond that. And so on and so on. And again, we see like the same thing illustrated with the Susanoo. And basically, the way to think of it is like for Sasuke as an example, like if he can't, be able to basically like go blow for blow with V2 Raikage, right? Because we know V2 Raikage is similar to KCM Naruto or Minato, right? And things like that. But he has to resort to turning on his Susanoo and then a Mataratsu, and that can keep up. And mind you, he's able to do that even without even looking at him while he's with so on and so forth. Like again, this could definitely be utilized to deal with someone that is potentially faster than you in physical speed. Because otherwise it just wouldn't be possible. And they would just still get straight up speed blitz before they could even think of they would have to be fast enough or faster in order to respond is basically what I'm getting at. And we see even similar things with Kimimaro. with his bone activation. He utilized his bones to come out of his body to deal with drunkenly, and things like that, and so on and so forth. So like there's tons of examples with it, but jutsu activation's always been a separate thing. So I just kind of putting that out there. And then you even have the statements. I don't well, I don't think Jay disagreed with it. I think he would agree, but we do know the Susanoo is way more faster than the user as well. It's stated during the Danzo fight and shown blatantly with the Sasuke and Raikage fight, and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's basically what I'm getting. Oh, and then like the Kabuto fight too, like just blatantly. You know what I mean? Like whenever there's certain like ninjutsu attacks Kabuto does, what are they doing? They're using their Susanoo for protection or for the speed discrepancy, right? Because they weren't fast or whatever, blah blah. So like that's really all I'm getting at. Other than that, along with the minute, I guess, yeah, the only thing I can really say, again, this is under uh the premise that Minato is within somewhat of that realm of power of KCM, and Obito, whatever, and things like that. And that's obviously like with the flying Raijin and Kamui and stuff. But when it comes to their physical stats, things like that, I don't think there's really anything to indicate or prove that it would be beyond like something like the Susanoo, or Kamui or flying Raijin, etc. But that's really all I can say. I'll let Jay respond. I think we both said plenty enough in the whole speed category.
Yeah.
The only other thing that we can really talk about is just really win con based, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be very, very straightforward.
Yeah.
But
Simply put, I'll quickly counter. I think it's a quick one. He doesn't need physical movement speed to dodge Amaterasu to deal with the Susanoo. He has his He doesn't require physical movement speed to activate the Flying Raijin, similar to how Itachi doesn't require physical movement speed to activate Susanoo. All he needs is his perception. I'm not going to go over it again, but I established he has better perception than Itachi as well. So he would just activate the Flying Raijin, appear behind him, take him out how he wants via cutthroat, via saying onto his back, to his head, to whatever. So he doesn't require physical movement speed. I could argue that his physical movement speed is like relative or even superior to Itachi's perception, but it's not even required because he doesn't need to use it. All he needs to do is activate Flying Raijin, get behind him, cut his throat, use Flying Raijin, use a Sealing Jutsu, use a Rasengan, whatever. And that would end the fight right there. So I'll just counter it by saying he doesn't even need physical movement. He just needs to activate his Flying Raijin, which again, it doesn't require physical movement, just perception. And after that, it's instantaneous movement behind Itachi. So.
All right. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
W, what's it called? The only thing we can get into is like just the win cons, obviously, but
yeah.
What's it called? And this is probably very, very straightforward because obviously we would more likely agree if there's a certain condition being in place. And obviously that's if it is, right? But
right, yeah.
What's it called? But I guess I'll just say mine since Jay went first with the Minato stuff. So for Itachi, obviously Genjutsu, that's what I would argue. It is stated by Lady Chiyo that you never ever fight in Uchiha 1-on-1, because it's like you have to actually run, and you can't do that, and that's mainly because of their Genjutsu. And Itachi, like he's even worse. It's like fighting two people instead of one, and Naruto states that as well, because he can cast Genjutsu with his hands or fingers, or he could do it with visual eyesight, which is even more potent and stronger. And then the worst case scenario is obviously Tsukiyomi, which is hacks, where that even takes away the concept of even fighting it at all. Because with the finger Genjutsu or visual Genjutsu, you could at least try to fight against it, right? And if you can argue scaling is at least relevant or compatible or beyond, then they should be fine, right? But the Tsukiyomi, the reason why that's a fucking problem is because it controls space and time and everything to where you can literally do shit in a picosecond, whatever the fuck he wants to do. But because it's hacks based, Kakashi says verbatim, you can't deal with that at all. If you get hit, you're done. Like there's no fighting that, whatever. And Lady Chill's like, wow, he's a monster. Like, what is he? Because at least with Genjutsu, you have the luxury to at least defend yourself. But with Tsukiyomi, you can't because it's hacks based. So like basically what I'm getting at, if he does like the Genjutsu, with his like hands or whatever, or especially if it's visual. But I'm gonna be honest, pretty sure me and Jay will both agree Minato's not dumb. He would know about the Uchiha, so he's not just gonna look at his fucking eyes, right? And obviously, again, this is under the parameters if they either had similar scaling, and so on and so forth. If there's relatively equal. Obviously, if Minato's way above and beyond, then this doesn't fucking matter. But at least for that, if he does at least his finger genjutsu or hand stuff, that I could potentially see being a problem for Minato. And then it could try to like basically just create openings or at least like confuse his perception on the battle, right? When they're doing like their chess match, basically. And that could just be a problem. And potentially it could allow Itachi to get like a Totsuka Blade moment, right? Or a Mataratsu or whatever. Because it gave him that time interval enough to to deal with it. That's all I'm really getting at with like the Genjutsu. That's still contentious. But at least for Tsukiyomi, if he gets hit by that, I do think that's a blatant win. But I'll let Jay respond to that if he
Yeah, so
disagrees.
yeah, so as far as the Genjutsu wing condition, there are several things that Minato could do and would do. It's just in character for him. He has the the kunais, and I believe obviously it's up to the people, but I believe I established he's faster. What he would do is he would use kunais amongst the battlefield. We do know that a Genjutsu caster has to be able to pinpoint their target, especially Tsukiyomi. It requires eyesight, or the ephemeral finger Genjutsu. You have to like fucking point at them and kind of target them to input the chakra into his opponent's chakra network. What he could do is throw kunais all over the battlefield, literally just teleport all over. It'd be extremely hard for someone with the inferior perception speed that Itachi has to pinpoint him. He could also use shadow clones as well. And as I've established earlier, Taijutsu, with a few exceptions, does not require chakra usage. So even if you argue, oh, well, he has to split his chakra amongst these shadow clones, their Taijutsu levels are still equivalent because, again, chakra is not required for Taijutsu. His physical movement speed would still be relative to the original Minato. At that point, Itachi's fighting several Minatos with superior movement speed to himself, as I've established earlier. He could use kunais again to just teleport all over the place and kind of throw Itachi off. He could use summonings, Gamabunta to fucking give him a hard time as well. There's many things that he could do to lower considerably the possibility and the probability of being cast upon by Genjutsu, especially Tsukiyomi, which is probably the greatest threat to him. Additionally, there is the Sage Mode possibility. What he says specifically when he utilizes it is, I've never used it in battle. So he's only assuming that he's not good at it and that it wouldn't be very advantageous. Additionally, he is so dominant during his career that he didn't really need to use it. He was just always faster than everybody, even Obito. He didn't need to use it. He used Flying Raijin level 2. He didn't want to risk the chance of, oh, what if I don't have enough time and I use Sage Mode and I lose or whatever. Here, he could just teleport away. There is no village at stake here, right? We're not presupposing that Itachi's in the fucking Leaf Village trying to destroy it. It's just him one-on-one with Minato. He could leave, gather nature energy, use shadow clones, maybe like Naruto. If Naruto deduced it, he could do it very well. Come, and at that point, there is no Genjutsu threat because he'd be fighting with Sage Mode. And what we do know factually is that he's a better sage than Jiraiya because he doesn't have any frog imperfections aesthetically. So he's at least better than Jiraiya at sage mode, that we do know. If he needs time, he can teleport away. Teleport away from Itachi completely, go somewhere else, a fucking different location, gather it, come back, fight in sage mode. Then there would be no Genjutsu threat. Izanami would not work either if my opponent uses that. You need to be someone with confliction in your heart. If you're pure of heart, it doesn't work anyway. That shit wouldn't work on him because he's a pure-hearted warrior of the Leaf. He's not fucking Kabuto, who had an identity crisis during the war, an existential crisis essentially. So that wouldn't work either. There's literally no Genjutsu that would work upon him at that point. So there are multiple ways he could do it. He can combine all these factors, use shadow clones, Flying Raijin with Kunai and Sage Mode and Gamabunta. There's just many ways to even completely remove the threat of Genjutsu at this point in time. There's literally nothing Itachi could do. So there's a plethora of ways he could do this. So I think it's almost a non-factor. And if he's not using Sage Mode, it's very unlikely that Itachi could hit him with a Genjutsu successfully. So that's what I'd say about that one condition.
Yeah, absolutely. What's it called? So as for like the summoning and stuff, that could just be dealt with a Mataratsu, or even better yet, a visual Genjutsu, and so, or just to create certain things. Again, like the only thing I was saying for relevance of the Genjutsu is the fact that he could do like with his hands. You know what I mean? Like that's a problem, and that would eventually, like at some point in time, because it's just in character, that's how Itachi operates. Minato would be affected by the Genjutsu, and then he would have to obviously fight against it. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, he wouldn't be able to, because it's blatantly established in Naruto that if you at least have similar scaling or you're higher, then you can fight and clash out the Genjutsu, right? But because again, this is under the premise of whether or not if they do scale to one another in a competitive regard, whether if there's relativity or equal. If he's doing this, this is going to make it a hard time of him perceiving what's going on in the battlefield. Or better yet, he's going to have even less time to react to certain time intervals, or certain attacks, which could potentially lead um, to a death blow from Itachi. And we see it consistently. That's how Itachi operates as well. Normally, if someone is either potentially slightly stronger than him, or better yet, just equal to him, whatever, whether they're relative or equal, as long as he creates a diversion and distraction, he's able to land and speed blitz the person. It's just always been shown consistently. He does it against Nagato. When there's like that big fucking explosion, there's smoke and dust. Nagato can't, see or whatever, and then bam, he just hits him with a Totsuka, and so on and so forth. You name it, whatever. And then same thing as before. When Itachi is taking advantage of the moment of where he's about to deal with B and Naruto, and he intervenes, and is able to attack at a certain interval. Basically, if he's able to create a circumstance where you could be off guard, not really off guard, but you know what I mean, like just have way less time to react. Because if it's just blatantly up front, then they would be fine. But because either there's a smoke bomb or this, whatever the fuck it is, that just gives him more time to launch the attack and gives the other person less time to react to it accordingly. So if he's able to do that and the timing's right, that could potentially lead to a win con. That's basically all I was getting at. And we just see that's how consistently Itachi operates anyways. That's why he's always attacking from your blind spots or all that, or his Shuriken Jutsu, whatever you name it. That's why he had a sever the link vision against Nagato, all that stuff, whatever, etc. So again, that's just that. And he could, so just with him using Genjutsu, that could be problematic, and I could at least potentially maybe open or cause openings. As for the Tsukiyomi thing, whether or not if he could be able to land it or not, because that just determines whether if he's Minato just fucks up and looks at his eyes or not. But if he does look at his eyes, I would absolutely say for sure that's GG right there and then. But if not, then that's obviously there's that, because everything else visual based would require eye contact. I would still say it puts Minato at a disadvantage because now he's having to look at his body the whole time, and react and so on and so whatever you name it, and avoid his eyes. But again, that's kind of what you're working with. And at least for the other win con, I would say, yeah, this would be with his his explosive shadow clones. So we actually see him demonstrate this against Kakashi. So this would actually be a very good counter mechanism to utilize against someone that attacks their blind spots or tries to use teleportation and things like that. To where if he's using an explosive shadow clone, and he's using that, and they're having a competitive fight or whatever, and Minato tries to teleport and do something from behind or whatever you name it, and next thing you know it's blowing up, that could also potentially catch Minato lacking and fuck him up. So that alone. So like it really, that just depends on the timing. Again, it kind of be like the whole Obito and Minato moment all over again. But yeah, there's that. And then and either way, even if it's not able to hit him, whether if he's flying Raijin out of it, or even if he doesn't, do that and he just try to avoid whatever and he gets, ultimately at the end of the day, it's still a good pressure tactic that he could utilize for defense purposes and mechanisms, is what I'm getting at. So not only does he have the explosive shadow clones, the Genjutsu as well, but Susanoo is like the last fucking resort to utilize as well. And therefore, that's going to make it a hard time. So where Minato would either need to be trying to use Raizingans to combat against the Susanoo and things like that and so on and so forth. So there's that. I think the best win con Itachi does have, and again, this is under the speed parameters that what's it called, is a Mataratsu. If Itachi is in close range, I do think it would be fast enough to blitz Minato, because if Obito got blitzed by it, and for the context with the Obito thing, Obito sees Sasuke's eye go from normal to Sharingan, then to MS, and his Sharingan's honor, mind you. He sees it completely change throughout separate phases, building up the chakra as well in the eye, which that's also stated verbatim, okay? And then sees the Amaterasu being launched, and he still didn't have time to respond to it in time or whatever, and he got hit directly, and he starts screaming in pain or whatever. And then eventually we lead up to that statement where he says if Itachi knew everything about him, he would be dead. And that just puts in the question of whether or not if he just calmed it away, vacuumed it or whatever, or if some people think maybe he did Izanagi, we don't fucking know. But either way, I would say Amaterasu could be a win con, because if it can hit someone like Obito, who we know is pretty fast, and and so on and so forth, then Minato would obviously be no question, right? Because we see his fight against Obito. and things like that. So there's one more thing I will say, but I'll let Jay respond to that. 'Cause I don't want to add anything more.
Yeah, I'll say this. So just to clarify to the people and to everyone, we're essentially arguing the probability in which claim is more probable and which combatant is more probable to win. So it's
Yeah.
possible that Itachi could win, but I'm arguing that it is substantially more probable that Minato would. I believe I've established that he has better speed in every metric, from perception to movement. Hacks as well have an instantaneous teleportation. Simply put, the margin for error for Itachi is much, much, much smaller due to the inferior speed that he has in comparison to Minato. Minato, due to having the superior speed, has a much larger time interval from his perception, again, having superior perception, to inflict damage upon Itachi. Again, there's the Sage One possibility, which would remove all these Genjutsu, unless you want to counter that later on, that he can't use it in any fashion. And the very style that Minato uses is cutthroat, efficient, quick to the point type style. He kills people quickly and very efficiently. So he's going to strategize the quickest way to eliminate Itachi, which is honestly getting behind him, putting a marking on him, using shadow clones, and just slitting his throat or just point blank Rasengan him in the face with the AP that was sufficient and stalemating the Nine Tails in the astral plane in the Minato one shot. That's like the most efficient, likely way he would approach this. Itachi would have a much, again, smaller margin for error because he'd have a tough time tracking Minato's movement. Again, his perception, again, while sick, struggled to react to a lightning strike, which is thousands of times slower than the speed of light. And unless you can argue that he's thousands of times faster when in his prime, there's no way that he could conceivably efficiently react to light speed movement. There is no indication of that. Even as an Edo, he was competing again. I've said this many times with a fatigued, significantly fatigued conversation having KCM Naruto, who's clearly not at his dad's level at this point in time. He's fatigued. He has multiple shadow clones everywhere. He's having a conversation, so he's not bloodlusted either. While again, conversely, Itachi is bloodlusted, acting out Kabuto's will and barely competing with, well, not barely, but competing with him. So all these indicators essentially indicate that Itachi would have a very, very hard time using any win condition due to his inferior speed, the Genjutsu, the Amaterasu. I would also add Amaterasu can be dodged. The Raikage did it against 5 Kage-Summit Sasuke at point blank range. He like moved out of the way because of his pure speed. And as we know, Sasuke had better control over Amaterasu. Having Kurotsuchi, he could like move it and it was more malleable in his control. I believe C, I believe was his name. Even stated, yeah, Sasuke is even better than Itachi, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Then, with manipulating the flames of Amaterasu. So simply put, Minato would just always dodge it. More than likely, most of the time, he's just way faster than Itachi. There, the Sasuke and Raikage were somewhat comparable. Here, I've established that Itachi and Minato are just not comparable at all speed wise. Itachi's just not as fast as people believe he is. I know we have the bias that he's this amazing shinobi, but I've established empirically, not just via rationalism, empirically, that it is highly likely that he's just not as fast as people think. And the opponents he did face when he was sick just weren't that powerful. Orochimaru in comparison to Minato, fodder. Kakashi in comparison to Orochimaru, fodder. Naruto at that point in the series in comparison to Minato, fodder. So it doesn't really matter that he dominated these other people so handedly. He just never faced someone at the level of Minato. Not even when he was in his prime. Again, KCM was, KCM Naruto. I already said why. So all in all, Minato with his win conditions, which I believe the most viable one would be Rasengan to the back or just cutting his throat, would just simply have an easier time and would defeat Itachi because empirically there's much more to indicate he is superior, and it's simply that simple. But yeah, that's my response with the win condition stuff.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. What's it called? Yeah, and again, just to say to connect to what Jay's saying, if this is under the parent, it's like that's why like it was a little unfortunate that we didn't have a judge because that makes debates a lot more quicker and more concise.
Yeah.
Obviously, if the judgment was made to where like, yeah, Jay got the whole speed thing, whatever, and so on and so forth, then we wouldn't even be talking about all these like that's just completely irrelevant, right? I mean, there's no point of win cons and because it doesn't fucking matter if you're just massively outscale the person or just faster, right? Which we do see in Naruto like all the time. If you're just way more faster than you're fucked, right? You know,
Mm.
like Naruto is very, very, very heavily contingent on speed. That's what I'm getting at, you know.
Yeah.
And that like normally you are always the most dangerous fucking ninja if you were just really, really fast. Like you didn't even have to hit hard. If you were just so fast, like that's it, right? You know. So and we see that consistently. Shishui, Minato, you name it. So overall, like, you know, again, that I would absolutely agree. Like there's no point, whatever. Again, I'm just speaking under the premise if there is either relativity, you know, or if they're equal, whatever you name it. And this is all way backtracking to the everything I was providing way before, whether if it was the narrative stuff or comparing Minato and Obito or the whole fucking, you know, him being stronger in the work, while the version 9 Tails is not the same level, blah, blah, the whole nine, right? All that stuff and so on and so forth. That again, that was the whole point of all that. So
Yeah.
that's all I'm speaking based upon. And all I'm really getting at, just to re-summarize, just make sure everyone's following, is, you know, just again speaking based upon Amaterasu, I do think that's a very, very high probability because that's just way faster, especially if it's in close range. If it's from a distance, I do think Minato would dodge it. If V2 Raikage can, I don't see why Minato couldn't, right? But if it's close range, seeing someone like Orange Mask Obito getting hit, then that's where I'm like, I don't know. And that's even reinforced again because Sasuke says he'll just use Amaterasu on Obito to try to defeat him. You know, what's it called? But either way, you know, that's why I was speaking about Mataratsu. And then with the explosive shadow clones, because Itachi can make shadow clones as well. And like his speed is crazy when he does shadow clones as well, even though it's you know way weaker people, but it's just to show that he always uses his speed when he does shadow clones too. But he was able to perception blitz heavy Sasuke and perception blitz Kakashi from Part 1. You know what I mean? When he did his shot, like they didn't even fucking know that he could even weave hand signs and made one because while he was fighting the person, he was doing that at the same time, which is just insane. So again, you know, if he's, you know, doing either his genjutsu here and there, explosive shadow clones, all this shit, whatever, you know, and it's even able remotely to get in close range and doing a Mataratsu, that could be a fucking problem for Minato. And if he's also doing the Susanoo, and again, this is under established if they're relative or equal to each other, the Susanoo would be faster than Minato, and Minato would have to respawn by using Flying Raijin and so on and so whatever you name it, otherwise he'd just be fucked, and things like that. So that's what at least I'll say for all of that. The only other thing I can bring up for another potential win con is Izanagi. And I feel like this one's pretty very probable as well. The only reason is when we consistently see Izanagi in the show, nobody's able to fucking detect it or know that it happened. Nobody. Like literally absolutely nobody. Not Danzo, not Shishui, not fucking anyone. And mind you, Shishui is a person that was in a very similar caliber in regard to Itachi during that time. And this is obviously before, I'm talking about before the massacre. But either way, so I'm like, you know, I'm just putting that out there. But, and it's just someone like that was Itachi at that point. So Shishui is pretty strong too. But either way, like, Izanagi, at least objectively, has been shown that it's just undetectable. And it literally feels like a real life like sensation of death. And if he does have to activate Izanagi, like let's say it's like like absolute last thing he has as a resort, I don't see Minato potentially being able to, him not being able to react to that because he's going to believe the death occurred. You know, that's just what happens. Like the only person that came out of Izanagi was Sasuke, but that was only because he still had his Susanoo on. He thought he was dead and gone, but because he still had it on, Danzo was retarded and try to hit his Susanoo with a kunai instead of waiting for the Susanoo to be gone, you know? And then Shishui, he didn't have his Susanoo on or anything. He just got fucked up, you know what I mean? Because Danzo appeared from out of nowhere after using it, you know? Either way, we've seen a consistent basis. Whenever Izanagi is used, the other person just gets blitzed by an attack. And even Sasuke, he also got blitzed by the attack. The only difference is he just didn't get stabbed because Susanoo took the blow, you know? So if he does Izanagi, in theory, because Minato's not going to be on guard, whatever, what. He will literally believe he won. It's like it's a forbidden genjutsu. It's very powerful. And it was so strong. That's why Izanagi was created. And just to reinforce what Jay said earlier, the whole point of Izanagi is if you Izanami is if you're fighting your fate, whatever, trying to change whatever, blah. And the Uchiha were always trying to do that when they had the Civil War using the Izanagi. So that's why Izanami was created. So it's a very, very powerful genjutsu and forbidden. And I just, unless Minato had knowledge on that, which only people that had knowledge was like high level Uchiha, like Itachi, Madara, Obito, etc. I don't think, you know what I mean, that would be like even Sasuke didn't even fucking know about it. And Itachi had explained what the Izanagi and the Izanami was to him, you know? So again, like I do think that could be a pretty good scenario. And before I let Jay respond to the Izanagi thing, I'll just respond to his Sage Mode thing because I didn't respond to that yet. As for the Sage Mode, I do agree that Minato could obviously, like, this is logical and rational. He could teleport whatever, do it, and so on and so forth. The only problem though with Minato, and the reason why I just don't see that at least liable as an option, especially if like we're talking like in character too, is um when he was fighting in a death match against Obito, not one time did he try to use a Sage Mode to just end the fight. He could have easily teleported. You could even argue maybe he can potentially activate it immediately, as he's shown to do in the war arc, whatever. But not one time does he do that. And mind you, he's trying to protect the village, his kids, so he has all the incentive in the world to make sure he absolutely wins his fight or ends it as quick as possible at all costs. All the incentive in the world. There's no excuse. Yet he doesn't do it. And what I would at least lead from that logical analysis is the fact that if he's not willing to do that, this correlates to the statement he makes in the war arc that he's not very great at Sage Jutsu, and he can't maintain it for long at all, which we see blatant proof. When he turns it on, he does like one decent sized Rasengan. It wasn't even like massive. It was just like a bigger than the norm. And he goes to try to use that on Jubei, and then we know what happens. And then he's right after one move, he's cooked and he lost it. While Naruto can do like fucking several moves, taijutsu, ninjutsu, Raisen shurikens, you fucking name it, right? So like that's the problem. He's not able to like get a lot of Sage Jutsu. It's only for that one particular moment. And we know obviously how Sage Mode operates. It obviously amplifies you, right? So the fact that while he's either relative or equal to Obito, okay, very, very close fight, at least when they're having their physical combat exchanges, the fact that he didn't do that to even have like the edge, you know what I mean? To where now he should definitely be more faster, even physical stats wise. That's where I kind of think where it's like, I don't think it would really be a deciding factor here or really lead to anything. And anything, it more likely would do the opposite and just hinder him because he just wasn't great at it. I will give that he was a perfect sage, and they would probably be an amp as well, but I just don't feel like it would be at least relevant enough to be able to be the deciding factor winning the fight. Because if it was, then he would have done that. Is basically what I'm getting at. And we see this throughout all the time. Like, to be fair, we don't know if he knew Sage Mode when he fought A, but there's nothing to show that he tried to do it there. There's nothing to show during the Nine Tails incident. Not even if you take the games into consideration, when he fights Hiruzen and Jiraiya too. And in the war arc, he literally only does it once and then just gives up. Even knowing that was the only weakness Yamato had. And if they can at least just strategize, like, might as well keep trying, right? So that's all I will say on that whole Sage Mode thing. If it was that relevant enough, whether in the amp regard or just even convenience as a whole, because another thing we know with Sage Mode, it gives you, it rejuvenates you. It's like a fucking senso beam in a sense, right? Like with stamina and chakra and things like that. So like if it does that, that would be absolutely fucking crucial. But again, he says he's just not great at it or whatever. So basically what I'm getting, I don't think he has the same perks and benefits that Naruto would have. And that's kind of where he has an issue. And even Jiraiya, who had an incomplete, even Jiraiya like would have more benefits that he typically wouldn't have. The only difference is he has a perfect sage look, whatever. So it's just more conditioned to be more competent in certain areas, is what I'm getting at. But when it comes to like certain other benefits, whether if it's the amp regard or if it's fucking whatever the case may be, that just wouldn't apply, because if it would, then it would be absolutely essential for him to use against the battle in Obito. So therefore, what I would get from it logically is when he does it, it just allows him to have the nature energy effect, which can be a weakness to certain individuals or whatever. And maybe just slightly give him like an edge in overall stats. Not like something crazy, but just slightly. Like, that's at least what I would rationally get from that whole interaction with the war arc, and then everything with the Nine Tails incident, and just what he says about Sage Mode. But if you have anything for that, Jay, then let me know.
To counter that, counter to my Sage usage claim, essentially, it's a false equivalency to utilize the deathmatch with Obito, because he states in the manga the reason he doesn't use it is because it takes too much time to acquire nature energy. And in the altercation with Obito, he was in a rush. If he were to leave, and he could theoretically teleport away somewhere where Obito wouldn't know, there would be the risk of his child dying, his wife dying, more people in the village dying. That's the reason he didn't utilize it in that moment. That's the only time that we see in his career where he's pressed while alive empirically. And logically, it's very easy to, again, to explain why he didn't use sage mode. It's because it would take too much time, and it literally risk the child, the lives of his child, his wife, all that, the entire village, because he was literally protecting all of that at the same time while trying to win this fight simultaneously. It's essentially pretty handicapped, having to deal with, having to account for all these lives in his hands while Obito was just simply running a rampage with the Nine Tails and trying to kill Minato and use his family as bait. So essentially, that's a false equivalency, and it's not analogous to this battle. In this battle, they're one-on-one. He has no other lives that he has to account for or defend, so he could easily just teleport away and acquire the nature energy. So that him not using it in the Obito battle doesn't negate my premise that he could use it here, as these instances are not analogous, so you can't compare the two. Now, to counter the claim that the Sage Mode for him is not as useful as it is for Naruto, I would say the fact that he's a perfect Sage, as far as his appearance, he doesn't have the frog imperfections that Jiraiya does, would negate that, because Jiraiya utilizes it against pain. Clearly, it's advantageous for him to do it, being the inferior in that scenario. So it's very unlikely that a perfect Sage would not acquire the similar stats to the ones Naruto did. And there's nothing to indicate that that's not the case. And the claim my opponent made to try to establish that as an indicator, I've countered and explained why that's not an indicator, rather. So in theory, excuse me, in conclusion, it still would be a viable option for him. There's nothing to indicate that it wouldn't buff his stats. He would have all the time in the world. He could even use, again, the methods that Naruto used against pain, which Minato's more than intelligent enough to deduce and use himself. So all in all, again, that still holds. He's just the faster. Again, with the win condition discussion here, essentially, either one of our arguments will only be victorious if you think one of us won the speed scaling, which again is up to the people. But again, like Batman said, we were both presupposing that our speed scalings held and went through respectively. So it's up to you guys. This one, that will determine the rest of it. The speed scaling was probably the most pivotal. But yeah, so that's my
if I got it, bro.
Yeah.
That's just if I'm not saying I did or nothing, but that's why I'm just continuing. Otherwise,
we both have to presuppose.
Otherwise, that just hinders me at the end of the fucking day, So,
yeah, exactly. We're both presupposing we got it. It's the only way. So yeah. But yeah, that's my
fucking no, yeah, awesome, Jay. What's it called? Couldn't have done any better, bro. Really, honestly, there's really nothing more I can really advocate, because I think we did a really good job overall on this topic. Because at the end of the day, like, I was gonna bring up stamina and chakra, but let's be real, both these characters don't ever really want to have a fucking stamina battle. You know what I mean? That's not what they're really known for. They always go right straight to, like you said, to just go for the kill, whatnot, or end it as quick as possible. We just blatantly seen that with feats and consistency and in character. So yeah, I don't think we need to waste any time on that. And other than that, as for really, I don't think you even probably need to even try to like argue win cons for Minato, because again, like fucking, if the whole speed thing is really, that if you want to say at least your win cons for Minato, you did say the Sage Mode one, that was technically a win con.
Yeah.
Even though you
said it, I thought like you'd get behind him and cut his throat or whatever, or saying
Yeah, exactly. But I'm pretty sure your main win cons, you're not really gonna advocate jutsu. It's very straightforward. It's just speed and then jutsu, right? Rising on or just taijutsu,
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what's called. You could say the whole ceiling shit, but let's be real. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh yeah, Itachi could deal with ceiling. That's fucking retarded. If he gets hit by it, he's done. Yeah. So I think we all said everything we really needed to be said. I did remember this. 'Cause I forgot to address it. The only thing I guess I could bring up, and then this is literally it, was that one thing when he said the whole war arc stuff and whatnot, context or false equivalent, whatever, etc. The only thing I will get on that, again, that would just be contingent upon the relevancy and correlation with the three characters, Minato, Obito, and Itachi, right? That's all I'm really getting at. Which obviously then correspond to KCM, Naruto, and V2 Raikage. So there's that, and I was just bringing up those moments because we see the feats, with Itachi, Sage One Kabuto, whatever. Now I know there's a context, whatever you name it, but it's still very impressive because we know Kabuto is going out against Itachi, but he's just not wanting to kill Sasuke, and I forgot what the reason was, but he just didn't want to really do that.
Yeah.
But while for Itachi, whatever, and we know Itachi is back in the fight, like Jay said. But it's still very impressive because he's a Sage Mode user. He's still really strong. And Itachi, while not able to kill Kabuto, was still able to hold his own, have equal clashes with him, and then better yet, even blitz Sage Mode Kabuto at certain moments too in that fight. The only time and the only time Kabuto ever got things on Itachi was because he was having to protect and defend his brother. Which we all know. I don't think Jay would disagree on this, but anytime you have others around you and you have to protect them, or if they're even less powerful than you, that does nerf you severely. We've seen it with Naruto and Konoha. We've seen him, when he's with his kids against Delta, the whole nine, etc. Right? Like this is without a fact.
Yeah.
We even seen it with Gar with Deidara. So there's that. But adding that to further substantiate like the war thing, we see the Naruto and Sasuke. Like we see kind of a interesting comparison. Sure, you could argue that Sasuke maybe got slightly stronger after the fight with Kabuto, but to be fair, to the contrary, when you're utilizing chakra, especially Susanoo, MS abilities, whatever that is taxing, you're technically losing power. When you utilize chakra and stamina, you're getting weaker, and that's just consistently and blatantly established in Naruto. So like all I'm getting at is when we see that EMS Sasuke, they do perform feats and they're working together against Jubito, and there's at least objectively established a certain level of relativity. I know context can make it very fishy or vague or whatever, because we don't know the quantifications of their power levels at no point in time. But all I'm saying is we just at least know there is relativity between those two characters, from seeing those moments. And mind you, that Sasuke wasn't even at full power. In that case, Naruto, he was either close or he was or I won't say at full, but probably close to. We just don't know because that's when Naruto reactivates the fucking cloak. So there's that, and we just see like that or whatever, which again has correspondence to the Itachi stuff or whatever, because Sasuke Susanoo feat again when they interact or whatever, etc. You name it. And then obviously the whole thing in correspondence with Obito Minato and the Raikage and things. The other thing was with the Obito thing. Obito. So here's the weird thing, because Jay said along the lines that like what's it called, like Minato and Obito are like this beast whatever and all this like in speed or whatever, and there's a large discrepancy. But another issue that I have with that again is there would be no incentive or reason for him to even want to utilize the Rinnegan or obtain that, because the whole point of him getting the Rinnegan was for him to have power and for him to even have more of a chance to win against in the war. That was his whole reason of getting the Rinnegan, was to aid him, to give him more power in the war, to do certain things, whatever you name it. If he was like a speed monster, basically, just with his raw physical stats alone, then that technically wouldn't even be needed, and he wouldn't need to go through the hassle of like controlling all those Jinchuriki, all that stuff, whatever. It said he could just confront Naruto or Killer Bee himself and just easily capture them, and then they would basically be dealt with because he has a monstrous amount of fucking speed. And Naruto, even that case of Naruto is clearly not on that level, right? So like that's another like contention I guess I would have with that as well. But instead he gets the Rinnegan, and he even technically admits that hinders him in a way because it has so much chakra and power, like he couldn't even control both. He had to only use one. So like not only is it taxing in that regard, but then he's like doing all the Biju stuff, whatever. He's basically doing everything in a number strategy and a hacks jutsu convenience strategy is what he's getting at. And he's not solely relying on speed, and so what I'm getting at, if that's the case, if he's willing to go to nerf himself and have numbers and just try to use hacks, right, or whatever, such as summoning the ghetto statue with the Rinnegan, or whatever, the way I get from that is clearly that means he would think his speed is not adequate enough to give him the win con or be above, right? He needs these certain aspects to have any chance remotely, which is why he does that. And then when we see him fighting that KCM Naruto, they're in a competitive regard. They're going at it, whatever you name it. He's having to use Kamui against his attacks and whatnot. Like it's a competitive fight. So that's all I'm really getting at as, and that's in the beginning. As for everything after, there's no really point, whatever, because obviously we know the more longer characters fight, the weaker they get, right? And that's not that doesn't make any sense to bring up. But that's really all I can really say. If Jay wants to respond to that really quick, I think he said it plenty of times at the speed. I just forgot to respond to that
Yeah.
Because that was one of the things he brought up way back then.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
yeah, to counter that, the false equivalency stuff. So going back to the context, I would just say simply put, Kabuto is weaker than Minato anyway. So Itachi doing what he did against Kabuto doesn't prove that he's on Minato's level. Kabuto was fearful of Orange Mask Obito and Renegon Obito had to use the Madara specifically to get any sort of compromising power, negotiation power, implying his inferiority to Orange Mask and Renegon. So the Kabuto feats don't really matter. As far as EMS Sasuke and the claim that he only got slightly stronger, I would disagree again using Edo Itachi's performance against casual fatigue KCM Naruto compared to him easily reacting. Again, it was this one slight moment, but it's the only moment we have, so inductively I could still use it to make a conclusion. He effortlessly reacted to Sasuke trying to grab him with his Susanoo arm, and as we know, Susanos are greatly faster than their users, as Batman stated. He easily reacted to it with his own Susanoo arm, swatted it away, implying his superiority to that EMS Sasuke. And I would also argue, even later on in the war, Naruto, again, like I stated earlier, Naruto and Sasuke are not relative. Naruto's dispersed chakra to who knows thousands to possibly tens of thousands of shinobi with his nine tails chakra, so he clearly wasn't at full power when him and Sasuke were combating Jubito, and still Sasuke was shitting himself and saying how the hell did he get this power, how did he acquire it, and almost implying jealousy. So he's clearly inferior to him and to Itachi when, again, at the specific time when he was combating Kabuto. So none of those moments matter to me. And again, context disproves that they're relative and that Casey and Naruto's relative to Sasuke and that Naruto's at full power and he's not actually. He's dispersing chakra amongst thousands of shinobi when they're fighting Jubito specifically. Um, Now the Obito stuff, I guess I mean, it's kind of a voluntarily engaged with red herring. It doesn't really matter because Obito is just a reference point. But Obito, the reason why he used the Renegon and the reason why he did all this was because he lost a lot of firepower, a lot of manpower. The Akatsuki, were all eliminated at that time. Kabuto was using them to his whim, and from Obito's perspective, he didn't really have any much more options as far as help is concerned. He was very egotistical throughout his time. Even in the war, he's like, "Oh, am I sweating?" No. Like clearly, it wasn't because he needed to do this. He did so because it was the more convenient path, I would say, to establish his dominance. Obviously, also the Renegon you could theoretically, and I think it's highly probable that he acquired it to use the Rinne Rebirth to revive Madara as well. Since Nagato, the original plan was for Nagato to do it, but obviously he betrayed the Akatsuki and revived all of Konoha. So that's another reason why he got the Rinnegan, not because he couldn't defeat Naruto and company. He did it because he wanted to revive and Madara and continue to execute the plan of the Infinite Tsukuyomi. So it's not really because he can't beat them. Clearly he can. He's way superior to all of them, even with the Orange Mask. And the Raikage tried to speed blitz him. He fucking effortlessly phased through him. He's like showing up at Naruto's house and fucking talking to him in enemy territory. It's clearly because it's the easier path to enact Project Tsukunome as opposed to I can't beat them with just my Renegon with my Sharingan and Makamui. So I would argue that's not why he used the Renegon. More so for egotistical and just convenience reasons. So all in all, yes, that's my counter to that. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else. If you want to move to just conclusions now, I think that's it. Unless you have anything else to add.
Yeah, no, like the only thing I can really say in response is the fucking I was trying to remember the first one, but I'll say the second one. At least for the Naruto, the Kisame, and like an EMS Sasuke interaction. So there's two moments. There's one with the Jubito, but there's but even the Jubito, I think that was way before he gave all the chakra. I would have to double check that, but either way, I know the first moment when they're compared because this is showing Sakura, Naruto, and Sasuke. Those feats, it's like that's the first thing that happens, and that was way before when Naruto gave all the chakra to the shinobi and whatnot, you name it. Because there's two moments when Naruto gets the chakra. There's one when he needs to teleport him all the way with Minato, and then the other one when they were trying to combat against Obito and Madara with the Ten Tails, I think. And that like gave everyone crazy amps and shit. But at least for when the moment I'm referring to is like when KCM Naruto, like he's in KCM, and he's with Sasuke and Sakura. They're all doing shit, whatever, and it's just showing that, and they're both analyzing each other. Like he's like, oh, so this is Sasuke's new Sharingan, and Sasuke's like, oh, okay, this is Naruto's Nine Tails power, whatever, blah blah, and they're like both doing similar things, and there's like at least relativity, and they're performing similarly and things like that. And then as for the Jubito thing, they just do like combo stuff, whatever, and they're fighting him and whatnot. That could have been after, um, but I think it was before. But either way, the all I'm getting at is when Sasuke starts feeling inferior, that's when Naruto's tapping into KCM 2. Um, not KCM 1 is what I'm getting at. So I don't feel like there would still not be a disconnect with that. That's all we really get at that. And the way the whole Nine Tails thing works is with the KCM, is KCM Naruto's utilizing a limited amount of Nine Tails chakra to use for himself. KCM 2 is when he has access to the full use of the Nine Tails. So like, and there's several moments where Naruto's only doing the limited, or then he goes to all out form, and the all out form takes way longer. Like his KCM, he could use it, and then he has to wait, build it up. He can use it, but it's very quick. That's why he's using KCM a lot more in the war. While with KCM 2, it takes way longer to amass all that amount of chakra necessary, and then he can fully go into it. And that's why he doesn't do it until like very longer occasions that occur. When he first does it against Obito, then he eventually has to do it, along the way, against other people. But like it takes way longer, and it's just stated and shown. So that I guess that's like the only clarification I really want to make with that. There was one more thing, but I can't really fucking remember, dude. It was something he said, but it was with I guess all I will say is with the Obito thing. Um, there's no point to repeat that. It'll just be circular. But it was something I was gonna spawn. There was something you said with something else, but I can't remember, bro. But other than that,
Yeah.
that's basically all I got, man. Unless you want to
Yeah.
respond to that real quick, and really, there's really nothing else because that's it. If you disagree with that, then it doesn't matter. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'll just say quickly that the specific transformations Naruto does when he's with alongside Ima and Sasuke doesn't negate that he backpacked the entire war, while conversely Sasuke was he was protected mostly in the Kabuto fight by Itachi, who was bloodlust, who had no limitations or restrictions due to being an Edo. So he was it was very apparent that he was much fresher than Naruto, and it's not analogous, and they're definitely not equivalent in like their power levels or their stamina levels, I should say, rather, at that point in time. But that's it. Everything else, yeah, I agree. I
yeah,
think that's touched
all
on all
righty,
of it.
man. Yeah, no, I think that'll be about it. If you really want to conclude, I think we.
Uh,
That's up to you, Jay. If you think it's necessary, I can do it, but I
yeah.
don't. People might just think we're either, but that's up to you, bro. I don't mind. I don't really care
Shall
though.
we conclude? I guess we can make quick ones. It doesn't have to be anything long-winded.
All right,
Um,
yeah, that's
yeah.
fine.
I guess I'll go first quickly. So
Yeah,
essentially, uh, I believe I won this debate due to having a more pragmatic approach to this topic, a more realistic approach, implying a higher probability of my claim holding, the positive truth value here. I believe there are multiple claims that I countered quite effectively, some that I could disregard via Hitchens razor. Overall, I believe the speed scaling that I had, held through and was successful in being the superior claim, with Minato just being superior in every metric as far as speed from combat to hacks, instantaneous flying rising speed to perception. I believe he's superior in all metrics, and I believe I proved the superior scaling here. And because of that, all the win conditions kind of fall apart for Itachi. Like they're possible, but they're just far less probable, and his margin for error is far less. Uh, his margin for error is far smaller due to the inferior speed that I believe I have established with him in comparison to Minato. The Edo feats are actually anti feats in my argument. They don't prove that he's on Minato's level. In fact, they prove the antithesis of that. They prove that he's inferior to Minato, fighting a, again, fatigued, casual conversation having KCM Naruto, while conversely Minato is reacting to full speed Raikage, which is light speed, and outspeeding teenage Obito and just doing all these crazy feats. His character is perfect for this fight. He's very cutthroat and efficient. He wouldn't allow any testing or any strategic sort of tests when it comes to Itachi, being blatantly aware of Uchiha's nature. Again, I think I've proven that Sage Mode is definitely a plausible option, having no lives in his hands in this specific scenario. You could leave, you could use clones like Naruto did in the Pain arc. You could use Gamabunta to be sort of perhaps a distraction. You can throw kunais all over the battlefield to throw off Itachi, who, again, while sick, had a tough time reacting to lightning speed, let alone light speed. And again, I don't think it's provable that just because he's healthy, he's thousands of times faster than he would be when he's ill. I don't think that's provable whatsoever. So even in his prime, he's not near light speed. In fact, I would say substantially below that, which Minato casually reacts to and operates at. On top of that, he has instantaneous hacks, which, that combined with his beyond light speed movement would just be way too much for Itachi to ever handle and utilize any arsenal winning ability, let alone defeat Minato. He'd have a tough time hitting him, let alone beating him. So there's that. So all in all, I believe Minato is a superior combatant, due mostly to the speed scaling, but also due to his character, due to his hacks, due to his his intellect, and due to his AP as well. But yeah, so that's my overall argument why I thought that I won this overall debate. So that's it. Yeah.
No, W conclusion, brother. I'll keep it even shorter. Honestly, I'm gonna say here, and I'm not gonna make a claim that I want that I think I would. Cause I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know if I won. So at the end of the day, that's all up to you guys or whatever. But I will say this for my conclusion for the main argumentation of it, in a more simple consensus is with the narrative statements of trying to correlate all that with Obito and Itachi, which obviously would then connect to Minato and the Raikage and the KCM Naruto stuff and whatnot, because of seeing the Obito younger version fighting and whatnot, and then obviously with the Orange Mask he'd be strong, whatever, and if that corresponds to Itachi, then that would do the opposite, where Itachi would have the edge and speed, whatever, so on and so forth. Um, but even if that wasn't the case, at least along with all the feats and all the tons and tons of interactions that we do see throughout the narrative of Naruto, whether if it's with KCM, Itachi, Sasuke, Sage Kabuto, whatever, things like that, so or even with Rinnegan Obito, or even when we see Orange Mask Obito, like his stuff, what he does. At least just with everything, all of that in correspondence, we can at least come still to a minimum conclusion that there would at least be relativity or they're equal to some regard, because of how Vega gets at certain points. And then if there is eventually that whole discussion of like what Minato did in the war arc, but my whole thing was that's a false equivalence, and that Minato is actually way more stronger than the one we see with the Nine Tails incident, and that there's direct contradictions. And I try, that's when I got into that whole territory of why and so on and so forth, the statements and feats and etc. Other than that, then we talked about speed to other points, and then we also talked about jutsu activation speed and all that, to where how that differs from physical speed stats, or even body flicker as well. So obviously, if Itachi is relative or equal to this Minato, vice versa, then jutsus and abilities are going to be very, very drastic and useful here. And I just feel like Itachi had way more convenience, to be able to spam Genjutsu when he wants, and for him to avoid eye contact, and Susanoo, explosive shadow clones, all kinds of fucking shit, because we know the Sharingan can also master up on the Jutsu. I didn't say that in debate, so I'm not going to include that. But either way, I just overall the general is I just feel like he has way more of an advantage to pressure, whether if it's defense or offense. He's just a more capable ninja, while Minato just has rising on teleportation, and just known for like his raw scaling, right? It's not really like an arsenal of abilities. And you could also count Sage Mode technically, but but yeah, and then we got to the whole win con stuff, and then we got the Sage Mode, which we talked about that, and so on and so forth, which was basically why I thought Sage Mode would be inadequate, explaining the whole Nine Tails incident, life and death, you name it, etc., the whole nine. So overall, I thought this was a great fucking debate. I had fun.
Yes, sir.
Jay had me sweating buckets, but hey, at the same time, it's all good because it was a W debate. So listen,
Sure.
I had fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys in the chat, comments, whatever, you guys let us know your opinions on everything, whatever, etc. And I'm pretty sure Jay will probably release it on his thing. I'll see if because it's honestly the same shit, so I don't really see a point of doing that if it's the same. But if for any reason, I'll post it as well. I did show the scans that we talked about at some point on mine. I don't know if you'll have that, so maybe I'll post it just for that if you guys want to see at least the
Yeah.
scans when we start talking about the whole Nine Tails moment with Minato. But other than that, everything was just very straightforward. Because me and Jay we're not going to rat here, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If we know it happened, why contest it, right? We'll just rather use our logic and debate or whatever.
Yeah, facts.
So that's what. So thankfully we didn't have to go through that bullshit, which I expect nothing less. Where we had to show scans for every fucking thing we said,
Yeah, literally.
Um,
It's bullshit.
so it just came down to argumentation or whatever. So that was W. And honestly, I think we did a good job. I know it was like 2 hours long, Jay, but it could have been fucking way worse,
Oh, for sure.
Like honestly,
Yeah.
I think it was only that long because it is a contentious topic. There
The
is a good
speed,
amount to discuss,
the speed is fucking
and speed is the biggest one. Yeah,
facts. Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. This shit probably would have only been 30 minutes or an hour at most if we did have a judge. Because if they gave the point on who got the speed, then that right there and then that would have been it, right?
Oh, facts. Yeah, that determined
and there would have been no point in there would have been no point in discussing win cons or any of that bullshit and the sage mode and all that and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, literally.
But so the debate would have been way, way, way less. Really, the biggest portion of this debate was just the speed point.
Oh, by
that
far,
was it.
yeah.
So, and that was it. So again, like we even then, if you just take away all the other half, like honestly, you don't even have to listen to the whole other half. It just mainly be the speed thing at that point. So now obviously if let's say for whatever reason Jay doesn't have that, then you want to listen to the rest, right? Because that's not fair for Jay. So but anyways, I thought we did a really good job, bro. So if it was anybody else, that shit probably would have been like fucking 3, 4, or 5 hours.
Oh, facts. With the speed shit and people ratting. Oh, facts. Yeah, I'll do a poll. Let's see. Might as well see like what the people they thought won, who won.
And also Jay, what's it called? He agrees that Itachi is the winner. So
yeah,
just want to put that out there for you guys too.
Yeah,
he had to use sophist tactics, obviously.
Yeah,
there's no so he's not being a rat. He's being a sophist because he's competing. He's trying to win the fucking discussion. So I just want to put that out there too. So if you guys agree with wait a minute, but so yeah, there's that as well. He does agree that Itachi wins and whatnot. But speaking of that, now the debate is fucking over. I want to fucking hear it, bro. Why does Itachi win? Let me know. Shit, I wish I had that JTheGreat, fucking some fusion shit from Dragon Ball Z, bro. I'd be like, hey, Jay, help me out, bro. Why do you help me out against this evil sophist Jay? Fucking.
Yeah, literally.
Why does Itachi win? Anyway.
If I had to combat myself, let's say they use that shit that they said about Itachi's performance and all that. I would certainly bring up the MS stuff. Like he's not using Susanoo, so it's not his maximum possible physical movement speed that could literally use. He's not using Susanoo. I'd also say that you could argue just because he dispersed that Naruto dispersed shadow clones everywhere, it doesn't inherently mean that he's fatigued because of that, because of the Nine Tails, giving him chakra. There's that. The sage mode shit, I would say, yeah, I would have used the Obito thing for sure. Also would have said there's no reason for him to lie about that. There's no reason for him to be disingenuous about it. Why, about him not being able to use it. And simply put, in his career, it's just more advantageous for him to use his own, his own abilities without sage mode intervention. He has a
So basically, we're in a similar consent. You would have had very similar or the same argumentation, but you would have just argued it obviously in a different capacity to try to be the victor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But nothing really anything crazy or something I didn't basically try to get at. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And
the two things you did say, which I just agree that Naruto would be fatigued, not at full power. With the whole shadow clone thing, that's a good one. And then you said the MS thing, but what the only reason why I let the Casey and Arts thing, because I'm gonna be honest though, because I looked through the whole fucking war from the beginning and then to and all the way to those relevant points, but he does a lot of shit, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He does all these fucking jutsus, taijutsu, ninjutsu. He's spamming all kinds of shit, helping in the war, and then does all his shadow clones, a shit ton. And then he moves, you know what I mean? And then there's a time skip. So maybe like, like, but it goes to like we just don't know, right?
Right, yeah.
And then we just have to obviously go objectively from what we're seeing and shit. But what we do know too, though, is whenever he has the cloak on, even that is taking away his power. Like even that
Right.
is fatiguing him and making him nervous. Just having it on, you know. So like because there's like tons of statements that come from Killer Bee saying that. So it's like overall, it's like even if I try to like, I feel like if I try to go that route to like apply skepticism, whatever, you just have way more evidence to the contrary. It'll be like, nah, he has to be fatigued. There's no way he's at full power. You know what I mean? Because like
Yeah.
the only way to advocate for the full power shit is say is if you know what the fucking happened off screen. Like
Yeah,
so.
literally. I would say also I would have
But
brought up the fact that even though like speed is, I would say the main thing compared between Naruto and Minato is only speed, and that
yeah,
Naruto's superior in other aspects, like obviously his AP, his durability because of the Nine Tails. So comparing the two isn't exactly analogous, only in terms of speed, as well. Um, I would probably argue that the Raikage got weaker actually because it's very implied that he's just kind of the guy on the throne and he doesn't really have to engage in battle until Obito starts to like make threats during like before the Fourth Great Shinobi War. He's
yeah.
older. We do know age affects and depletes you. Like Hiruzen got a lot. He's weaker. Orochimaru even states it. Like if you're 15 years younger or some shit, you'd beat me. Um,
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
that
Yeah.
too. Probably would have brought that up. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. My arguments were hard even for me to like combat some of them.
No, you did it. You did it really. Honestly, the route you went, that's what I would have tried to done for Minato too.
Yeah,
I would have went the same route, the way you did in the war, whatever, blah blah, you name it. Which that brings the most important question because and what was kind of unfortunate. I was gonna. Someone's probably gonna do this now if they do listen to this, but what's it called? I was eventually gonna make a Minato video of whether or not if he's stronger in the war or not. I think
right,
that's a
right.
very good title and topic to do. No one has done that. No
No,
one.
no one has.
No, every time they discuss Minato scaling, they always think that motherfucker is just like only KC on one level, right? And then
Yeah,
like and either in like a similar competitive regard to Itachi, Nagato, fucking people like that, right? The high caliber people, Obito and things like that, or KC Naruto and V2 Raikage. Like those like the only people like that's always the norm, like the go-to, right? All the time you see on YouTube or scaling, whatever. Um, but when it comes to the question of like the Warwick stuff, nobody ever thinks of that or says anything, which is really funny because it's like if you think that's where Minato's at, then that means like there's two ways. Either for one, that applies to scaling for all the rounds. That means Obito would be the same. That means Itachi would be the same. You see what I'm getting at?
yeah,
Like they all be similar then because Minato does it, right? Or that maybe he was stronger and that's why and so on and so forth, whatever. Because again, like the whole Nine Tails thing. Like, do you think the Nine Tails is helping his base or no? You don't think at
I would
all?
say after he befriends it, yeah. I think at that point
Okay.
it's at that point it's voluntary. Like the Ninetale is just aiding him anyway because
Yeah.
he's voluntarily like already befriended him. Before that, probably not, but after that, yeah. I think after that it's
Got
he's aiding him.
gotcha. Because that would
Yeah.
be like, I don't know. I just feel like that's like the only logical explanation to why he's over here outspeeding someone like Hashirama, but like drastically. Like, because I know it's his base, but we see base Hashirama fighting against Madara, and he doesn't fucking go Sage mode until Madara does the majestic fucking Susanoo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so even base is still very fucking strong and impressive, even speed wise. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it just feels like a weird outlier. You know what I mean? Or like that just doesn't like or so like what's the explanation? And it's like was Minato always just built like that? And that would
Right.
also include Obito too. You know what I mean? So we're like, yeah, they are blatantly Madara and Hashirama level when it comes to speed, like physical stats.
Yeah. Like base.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, and that's crazy. I'm not Sage mode. Jay already said that too. But like it's either they are built like that or it's because of Ninetales. Like that's the
Yeah.
only two logical explanations. So
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting, and that's a very important thing to decide. Like personally, like it's just interesting because like then we see fucking Edo Madara, you know what I mean? Like and this like without the running on everything, and he's over here responding to Casey
thing
to
to
the side.
Naruto.
Like you see what I'm saying? Like that's where things just start getting weird. So
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it's those arguments I had to like create some pretty, like airtight ones, but there's
yeah,
counters to them. It's just even for me, it was hard to fucking find some, like preparing.
yeah,
Uh, like that whole body flicker thing. Yeah, you could argue like Hashirama's demeanor. He was very playful. I mean, obviously there's like a
mm,
whole world war going on, but like even when he was talking
yeah,
to Sasuke, and he's the only one that was like really playful about everything, and maybe he wasn't even using close to his full like speed when he was going there. Like I mean, clearly he's worried about what's happening, but he wasn't like, oh fuck, we gotta fucking get it together. Like he was very playful and like talking to Sasuke and shit. Like his demeanor was different than like
yeah. You
Tobirama's.
could try to go that route, and maybe he wasn't trying enough.
Yeah,
What's it called? Like the only thing though is like from memory, I would have to go back too, but it's like there was a point where I think he does show some form of like seriousness, like oh shit, because the moment he hears Madara is involved, he's like, yeah, okay, we gotta fucking get there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and dude's with it because he knows only he can fuck with him.
exactly. Yeah,
So like so there is that, and then like Hiruzen was blatantly like, "Oh yeah, we gotta fucking get there." I mean, and Tobirama was shitting his pants too. So like,
yeah,
there's no excuse for them. You know what I mean?
yeah. They were literally like
What's it called?
fucking
And then
hurrying.
Minato, like, that's just in character. He always takes things to the extreme. So like,
Yeah,
there's no excuse for like, yeah, that could probably be like the best way. I feel like there's still like way
they're
more enough though,
questionable.
like especially
Yeah,
incentive. You know what I mean?
yeah,
To be on like on the other side. But at the same time, you could question him because he does do that. Yeah, that is a thing.
yeah.
You know,
It's
and it's even worse if you count the game to where he has like a warm up fight with Taka,
yeah,
like, and then they go to the war.
yeah.
So, um, but yeah, so
Yeah,
fucking,
it's an interesting
uh,
debate. It would be hard for me if I was debating myself. I heard those. Yeah, I'd have to really prepare for that. It's not easy to
uh,
like counter like efficiently, but yeah, I mean,
yeah,
Itachi, I
because
think
unfortunately, Minato just has way more screen time,
he
way more,
does more
and
statements,
and
more
it
lore.
allows, yeah, and it allows him to just to have the edge and advantage in that capacity, and then if you don't analyze context, you know what I mean, or like all the other statements and even feats, because there are feats to advocate for him too.
Yeah,
If you just don't like, you have to be really on your A game for it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, like, I feel like it's a lot more easier to try to vouch for Minato. But all because it's either doesn't mean that's actually that like correct, right? I mean
yeah. It's
that's
like
absolute integratable. 'Cause it's the saying where yeah, it could be easier, but does it make it true?
yeah,
Or
it's
is
like
it like, oh, is that right?
rationalism
Yeah,
versus empiricism, basically. Like
yeah,
empiricism
exactly.
usually wins, but doesn't mean it's true. Rationally, it's like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Because like even if there may be more for in favor to try to argue for the other person, as long as that other person has just enough to where it's you can form logical logical sense argumentation, then there you go. That's it, right? You know what I mean?
yeah. It's like
So
when it comes to these
uh,
topics, eventually you hit a point of such ambiguity. There's nothing much more
yeah,
to say. Like there's nothing else you
yeah.
could
It's just
really
contentious. Like you don't
yeah.
really, like
There's nothing else to
because
grasp onto. Yeah, there's no more data,
yeah,
no
and
more nothing. It's like
that's the problem about Naruto. That's why it's
uh,
always really interesting and like how long it's been years and people still fucking like discuss or debate or whatever or to stick that on because of just how contentious it can be.
yeah, literally. It's
Um,
like it's like
and then it really just boils down.
Momo
Uh,
versus Delta is one of those where there's in the manga there's actually more for Delta than fucking than Momo, even though rationally Momo should win. Like because he looks like shit
yeah,
when he's fighting base Naruto, he looks like crap. And then like
and Naruto was nerfed too.
yeah, and
He's
he
like
was
at fifty
nerfed,
percent power.
and then Naruto against Delta, he's like, oh, I need to go all out, and he's full power, like fucking. So it's like a
Yeah,
weird shit, but Momo's
yeah, like
stronger.
that's a yeah.
Yeah.
Like I will say this, I do think Fuse Momo is
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
what's it
yeah.
called? Yeah,
I think
he
so
is,
too.
and but it's similar to the whole fucking Minato and Itachi thing. You know what I mean? Like it's like you're saying, like, but if you really hyper analyze that whole fight and you get like the whole all the fucking panel, right? You know what I mean? Statements, feats, whatever. There is so much fucking abundance of evidence of why Delta was nowhere near fucking Naruto, and why he was actually like not actually going all out and so on. So he was because it's along the context where when he's saying he's going all out, it's in the regard of like he's more serious now. He's gonna actually like put her down now. While before, because basically the way the fight starts is they start fighting whatever, and he's fighting her in fucking base, and they're both still going at it, right?
Yeah.
And then like he does his cloak, they fight or whatever. Then he lets Delta hit him to try to get intel, but Delta realizes what he's doing. So then he's like, all right, enough. So he stops that. He heals, right? They go at it a little bit again. It's not really getting anywhere because Naruto's like holding back, whatever, blah, blah. And then Naruto's like, all right, I'm gonna finally be more serious and go all out or whatever. Um, but he's still holding back because eventually it's reinforced when Kawaki is watching the fight because Boruto's like, oh my god, like there's no room for us, whatever. Kawaki's like, nah, bro, like fucking Naruto's actually way over this chick and like he's a monster. He might even be stronger than fucking Jigen. He literally says
Yeah.
those lines, and then Boruto's like, wait, why? He's like because he's literally having to protect us and restrain his power severely and make sure he's diverting her attacks and his away from us. Because
Yeah.
if he does a certain level of power or whatever, they're gonna get killed because they
Yeah.
don't scale nowhere near
He's
that.
basically
You
he's
know,
handicapped in a way. Yeah.
he was
Basically.
handicapped severely. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then on top of it, so not only could he do like his full taijutsu output that he would normally do, what's it called? He couldn't even do all his normal jutsus. Like he doesn't spam thousands of shadow clones. He's not spamming massive, you know what I mean? Like all the rising guns and rising shurikens. He's not doing a Biju bomb. He can't do any of that shit. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he's not even doing his avatar form, you know?
No, he has
Like
to
none of
hold
that
back.
shit.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
holding
yeah,
back.
like he has to hold back to such extreme degrees. And like and then this further substantiated and emphasized when he's fighting Jigen, he was like getting his ass whooped, but it was mainly because he was in Konoha and he was trying to protect people. But the
Yeah.
moment he gets to the dimension, now it's a more relative fight. Jigen was still slightly above, but it was relative, right? Like they were still going at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
and same thing with Sasuke. And he says right there and then, the moment they're in the dimension, it's like, oh, I can finally go all out now and not have to worry, whatever, blah, blah. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like, again, like you have that, and then the Shiki's the same shit. Shiki comes, whatever, but it's like obviously more worse. But the moment he gets sent to that other fucking void or dimension, he says the same shit. And what do you know? He's performing way better than when he was when he's in the village, you know?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's like,
There's
so
context.
it's just blatant. Yeah, there's a way to do it. You know what I mean? Like, so Jay's
Yeah.
not wrong, and that is the right stance. But again, it's just that's what we're talking about, where it could look more favorable potentially on a certain angle for the other person, but it's actually not.
Yeah.
And
It's
while Fuse Momo, even though Sasuke was close to full power. To be fair, he only does a fucking portal. That's it.
yeah.
We don't know how much that depletes him. We know it like he's using chakra, but I'm not. We can't just sit here, but oh, now he's at half, right, or some shit, or maybe he's either close or maybe he is half. But to say a Rinnegan teleportation drains him half his fucking chakra, that's pretty crazy. But either way, they were both nerfed, right? And we just know the quantification for Naruto only. And it's like, yeah, it's 50% or whatever, but Naruto is still going all out, right? He doesn't
Yeah.
have to hold back though. He doesn't
No
have to
hold
worry
back.
about nobody. Yeah, he's going literally all out. His base was relative, but that wasn't even enough. He had to go his full KCM, and he's still going all out. Yet Momo's still holding his own, and he's fighting against two of them, not
Both
just
of them.
one.
Yeah.
Both of them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And if you do the math, let's say if you even put Sasuke at full at half as well, both of them would be full because we know how comparable Sasuke and Naruto are to
Yeah.
each other,
Very,
right?
very,
You know what I mean?
very relative. Yeah.
Very, very comparable. We know Naruto obviously does have the edge when it comes to chakra and raw output power. Like that's not a question. But in like similar scaling overall, there's at least blatant relativity. And Sasuke is the only one. This is said so many times to be the one that could actually challenge Naruto. You know. Um. So if you count both of them, that would technically math right would be full. So therefore, he is fighting a full scaling. You get what I'm saying? So there's that too. And then on top of it, he goes his like fused form, and they have to do a majestic fucking Susanoo. Not both their avatars. They had to
Combined.
fuse their
Yeah.
power, combine like some Vegeta and Goku shit. So if you analyze as a whole, Fuse Momo is blatantly above Delta. You
Oh
know,
yeah. It'd fuck her up, especially with his ninjutsu. Yeah. There's no
yeah,
way.
he can absorb shit. He can do. He has his own next level of transformation. His avatar form, and even his fuse stuff was fucking pretty fucking crazy. To fight Sasuke and Naruto, Delta's not doing that, bro.
Nah. I don't
Like,
know.
like,
Yeah. It's the bread and butter of
like,
sophists is to use those topics a lot of the time.
yeah,
Those kind of
you
topics
know,
is like their bread and butter. Like because of all the empirical advantage, all the data they have, they'll use that to like try to win the stance, even though it's rationally not correct. So
Yeah, no, facts, yeah.
With
That's what I'm saying,
ambiguity
man.
and fiction, that's like something that doesn't exist in the real world. In the real world, it doesn't really apply, But yeah,
No,
that's the
facts.
thing. But it was definitely a good debate, folks. I'll probably make a poll
It was
once
great,
more
man.
people see it on fucking on the on YouTube. That's probably the best place to make a poll. That
Yeah.
just people could just decide from there. I hope you guys enjoyed. Been a while, it's good to be back in it. Shinobi, we should be streaming tomorrow, looking at Shinobi, who we thought won and stuff too. If he watches it prior. Um, but yeah, hopefully maybe Sean and Batman can go at it eventually too. That'd be a good debate too if they go, they debate as well.
You talking about Shinobi?
Yeah, Shinobi, you and Shinobi can go at it. That'd
Yeah.
be debate some cool topic or something. That'd be pretty cool also,
Yeah.
actually.
We'll definitely have to divert it in a different direction. And what I mean by that, like probably stay away from the high tier categories because since like you two win
Yeah.
and it obviously it corresponds to the high tiers, and then we did, even though it was a different topic, not Pain and Itachi, but it's Minato and Itachi. Like either way, there's a lot of similarities and a lot of correspondence. So therefore, like we probably have to like it just need to be something else. Um, because fucking he's already gonna know about all this. He,
Yeah.
everything you want. It's just it's it's a lot of repetition. So, because it always anytime you discuss Itachi or Minato or Obito or Pain or Nagato, like they all connect. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's the
definitely.
problem. So,
Yeah.
and then it boils down to what the typical stuff that you normally try to advocate or certain other things that you maybe even bring up that nobody has said yet. But, so yeah, we'll probably have to like steer away from that. Otherwise, it's going to be
Yeah.
similar, argumentation but we could always find something, figure out something.
Yeah,
In worst
something
case, even
in
if we don't disagree on something, we could just do what we did. We could do a
yeah.
poll,
We
pick
can just do
something,
like
whatever.
part one or something. Yeah, some shit.
Yeah, it could even
Earlier.
maybe part one.
Yeah.
Shit, part one's way more straightforward too. So,
Oh yeah,
but
a lot more to
this
go
is
off of
so
that.
fucking simple, dude. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, but it is what it is. But and I expect nothing less because when you made that poll though, Minato and fucking Itachi are like they're literally the most popular characters in Naruto. Like
Oh, facts.
statistically.
Easily.
Like
Yeah, they're easily
every
the most.
poll or vote thing you see on YouTube, if it ain't Itachi, it's Minato. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if it comes really down to who they're gonna pick, they pick Minato though. Which is why he won the Naruto poll thing.
Yeah.
What's it called? But like it's just all the fucking time, bro.
It's the
It's
same
always
shit.
Itachi and Minato.
Yeah.
Well, people will even pick them in the most outrageous matchups, like Six Path or Hashirama, you name it, and they'll still pick, oh yeah, Minato or Itachi if they're in that fucking poll to win.
Yeah, Itachi versus Madara. I'll say fucking Itachi
Yep,
wins. Literally.
literally, like that's just how popular people are. Just biased.
Oh, facts.
like,
It still exists to this day, especially the casual viewer. Yeah, it's all the time. Like
oh,
logic
and
of
here's another thing too. Like Edo Madara, Hashirama had to go Sage Mode to fight him. By the way, and the
yeah,
work and the feats and whatnot. So like even Madara is like no fucking slouch. Now yes, that was Rinnegan with Hashirama cells. So to be fair, that could be why Hashirama had to go that extent. While when he fought just EMS Madara, he only had to do that when he had the help of the Nine Tails. So
yeah,
I do think there is a power gap between EMS Madara, um, and Rinnegan Madara. You know what I mean? Because I feel like when Madara gets to Rinnegan now, he's like actually able to compete against Seijuan Hashirama. You know what I mean? And Seijuan Hashirama still beat Rinnegan Madara, Edo to Edo. They both had the Edo nerf. You know what I mean? And he won. So
yeah.
what's it
Literally.
called? But he didn't win like drastically. It was like he hit Madara with like the Divinity Gate, and then Madara hit him with the rods in the back.
Oh, I remember.
Um,
Yeah, that's right.
so it was technically like a stalemate scenario, but Hashirama technically won because if you get hit by the identity, you can't control the rods. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that was the problem. So it's like it just boiled down to convenience. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
exactly.
that's why. And then Hashirama was like, "All right, seal this motherfucker." You know what I mean? Like he's down. But then the moment Hashirama, not Hashirama, Madara got revived, and he was at when he was alive, uh, fucking obviously now he's stronger than his Edo, right? And he fucking broke the Divinity Gates, which is great. Not even the Ten Tails could do that.
Yeah,
He
that
breaks
was
it.
impressive.
Yeah, and then he doesn't even have eyes at that point, but because he was alive, and then he just, what does he do? He controls the rods in Hashirama's back. Now I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know why the fuck Hashirama didn't take the rods out. Like he just left that shit in there, bro. Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, that was
um,
been a while since I've debated too, but it's fun to get back into it though for sure, especially when it's been a
oh
while.
yeah, man, it's fun. But what I
Yeah,
was getting at though with that is I feel like Minato and EMS Madara is actually a really good conversation.
that's a good one. Yeah,
Especially if you don't think the Nine Tails was the reason why Minato was able to do what he did in the war arc in his base. If you don't think that's the case, that's definitely a good conversation because then that would mean he is able to do what Hashirama could do, at least speed wise, right? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Obviously, when it comes to like destruction capacity and all that, whatever, um, that's all can of worms because you know the Wood Style and the Susanoo, they can do fucking crazy things, and we've never seen Minato like dude, like the closest you could argue for Minato was like in his one shot when he was a teen, which is still crazy. You know, when he like combats that Biju bomb with his Rasengan. So like I guess if you argue along those lines and that argumentation, then you could be like, okay, then he would have adequate enough AP to combat the Susanoo as well. But it's interesting, you know. So
yeah, definitely. And that
um, I
that
think yeah, I think it's an interesting fight. I would still lean towards Madara though because of
yeah,
all the narrative statements, you know, and then on top of it, I feel like the moment Madara just gets into his Susanoo, I don't think Minato could fucking do. You know what I mean? Like, because like we know he's faster than base Hashirama, right?
yeah,
But like, fuck. The problem though is like, you know, okay, yeah, he'd be faster than Madara technically, right? His physical stats or whatever, even body flicker. But then we know Susanoo is more quicker, right? And we know the Susanoo activation is quicker as well. So you know, therefore, it's like that would probably just be enough to help with that speed discrepancy, you know, physically wise, you know.
yeah. Minato,
Um,
there's ways to
but
make him like to argue for him that exist that
yeah,
make
but
it
the fact that you
seem
could argue it is there,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, it's there.
So
It's fucking crazy. Like arguments that I made that I don't think I've heard people use for him, like that you can use. Um,
man,
you fucking like wank his ass, but
like bro, that like to this day, that's just a crazy fucking feat. Like outspeeding Hashirama, like that's just
yeah,
crazy.
that's fucking that badly too. That's fucking crazy. I
Literally,
don't
he
know how the
got their
fuck
way
possible.
ahead. The whole conversation, planning his kunine, stopping the Ten Tails Biju bomb, like
Yeah,
this is
that's
crazy.
fucking
Like
crazy. That's makes him look like he's a monster. But yeah,
and,
folks,
and that's the
that's
thing, like, and that's the thing. Even if you like, you may think he doesn't have the AP, he has the hacks at least to deal with Madara's attacks and speed. He does have the
yeah,
hacks because he does his ceiling shit to the Ten Tails, you know what I mean, all that, like the Bija bomb, whatever, you know, whatnot, and like he did it to Nine Tails full, so like, and he was able to respond to the full Nine Tails as well with his Rasengan. So like, you know what I mean, like again, the arguments are there for EMS Madara. Like, if anything, shit, if you're good enough, you could argue why he would be above Madara, you know.
yeah, literally, you can do it. It's
Cause like, bro,
possible.
imagine Perfect Susanoo Madara swings his sword. He does like that ceiling shit, and then he directs it right back at him.
Holy shit. Yeah, that's
Because he
crazy.
could send the attack wherever he wants, so he could just
Yeah,
send it to Madara. You know, like
yeah, that's fucking. Yeah, Minato's an interesting character to fucking
yeah,
scale, honestly. But
he's that
yeah,
guy,
folks.
dude. You
Yeah,
know,
he really is. But yeah, folks, hope you guys enjoyed. It's been like 3 hours to stream. Definitely, it's good to get back into the game. We'll see if Shinobi and Batman can schedule next. Now that I debated Shinobi and debated Batman, now they just got to debate each other. Then that's
yeah,
like the last one between the three of us. Um, but yeah, folks, we hope you guys folks enjoyed that. I'll make a poll after more people see it. So, feel free to let us know who you thought won. Great debate, great stream. We should be back tomorrow. I think we'll regular stream tomorrow with Shinobi
yeah.
as well. But we'll see you next time, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out.
All